What's going on, everyone? It's Imagine Verse here. We've got something amazing for you today. What if Fleur Delacour claimed Harry as her mate at age 5 and the Veela Nation declared war on Dumbledore? Real quick, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Join thousands of story lovers and hit that subscribe button. Alright, story time. Chapter 1, The recognition. The cupboard under the stairs was never truly dark during daytime. Thin strips of light filtered through the slats, casting elongated rectangles across the small, dusty space that Harry Potter called home. Today, those strips of light looked particularly inviting as the 5-year-old boy traced them with one small finger, imagining they were paths leading somewhere else, anywhere else. Boy! Get up and make breakfast. Aunt Petunia's shrill voice pierced through the door, followed by the metallic click of the lock being undone. And don't you dare burn the bacon again. Harry scrambled to his feet, nearly hitting his head on the sloping ceiling that seemed to grow lower each month. He wasn't growing properly, even he knew that, but no one at number 4, Privet Drive seemed concerned. Yes, Aunt Petunia, he murmured, slipping out of the cupboard and padding toward the kitchen on bare feet. Morning sunlight filled the immaculate kitchen, gleaming off the polished surfaces that Harry spent hours cleaning. He dragged the step stool to the stove and climbed up, careful not to make noise that might wake Uncle Vernon earlier than necessary. As he laid strips of bacon in the pan, Harry's mind wandered to the strange dream he'd had, a dream of blue fire and silver wings, of a girl with eyes like the summer sky looking at him with an expression no one had ever directed at him before. It wasn't the first time he'd dreamed of her, but this time had felt different. More real somehow. What are you smiling about? Dudley's voice came from behind him, thick with morning grumpiness and perpetual suspicion. Harry's face instantly rearranged itself into careful neutrality. Nothing. Dad! Dudley called. Harry's doing freaky things again. The heavy footsteps that followed made Harry's heart sink. Uncle Vernon appeared in the doorway, his mustache twitching ominously beneath sleep-puffed eyes. What's this, then? He demanded. I wasn't doing anything, Harry said quietly, focusing intently on the bacon. Just cooking breakfast. Vernon's eyes narrowed to suspicious slits. No funny business today, boy. We have important company coming. Harry nodded quickly, relieved that his uncle seemed more preoccupied with the day ahead than with Dudley's accusations. The Minister for Magic will be here in an hour, Vernon announced to Petunia as she entered the kitchen, as though this were perfectly ordinary news. Some diplomatic rubbish. They insisted on using our home since it's... He lowered his voice, glancing suspiciously at Harry, protected. Harry nearly dropped the spatula. His aunt and uncle never spoke of magic, the M-word was strictly forbidden in the Dursley household. Yet here was Uncle Vernon, casually mentioning a minister for magic. Something very strange was happening. Why here? Petunia hissed, her face pinched with anxiety. And why didn't they give us proper notice? I'd have had the carpets cleaned. Vernon tugged at his collar uncomfortably. Something about foreign delegates. Veela, they called them. Some sort of magical creatures passing through Britain. Creatures? Petunia looked horrified. In my house? They assured me they look human, Vernon said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. The minister himself will be here, along with someone called Dumble, don't say that name. Petunia snapped, her eyes darting nervously to Harry. Harry kept his head down, flipping bacon with precise movements while straining to hear more. Dumble something. The name tugged at something deep in his memory. The boy should be out of sight, Petunia whispered. Lock him in the cupboard after breakfast. No, Vernon said, surprising them both. That Dumble person specifically requested to see him. Part of the arrangement. Petunia's face went white. Vernon, we agreed, it's just for today, pet. They'll be gone by evening, and things will go back to normal. He patted her hand reassuringly. Besides, we're being compensated quite handsomely for the inconvenience. Harry kept his expression carefully blank while his mind raced. Someone was coming to see him. Someone who knew his name and where he lived. The hope that flared in his chest was so unexpected and intense that it hurt. "Boy!" Vernon barked. "After breakfast, you're to bathe and put on your good clothes. And do something about that hair." Harry nodded, knowing full well that his good clothes were just Dudley's least worn hand-me-downs, and that nothing could be done about his perpetually untamable hair. As he served breakfast, enduring Dudley's kicks under the table and Aunt Petunia's critical stare, Harry's thoughts kept returning to his dream, the girl with silver blonde hair and that look in her eyes. For some inexplicable reason, he felt certain that today, everything was going to change. Fleur Delacour was not pleased. At 8 years old, the quarter Veela had already developed a formidable ability to make her displeasure known, and right now, her normally beautiful face was set in a determined scowl as she stared out the magically enlarged interior of the British Ministry car. "I don't see why we had to come to England at all," she said in rapid French. "Everything here is cold and grey." Fleur, her mother, Apollon Delacour, responded with practiced patience. "This diplomatic mission is very important for relations between Britain and the Veela Nation. And you were the one who insisted on coming rather than staying with your grandmere." Fleur crossed her arms, unable to argue with that point. She had indeed begged to come along, driven by a strange feeling she couldn't explain even to herself. Ever since her 8th birthday, when her Veela heritage had begun to manifest more strongly, she'd been experiencing unusual sensations, pulls toward things she couldn't name, dreams that felt like memories of places she'd never been. "There's something here," she said quietly, more to herself than to her mother. "Something important." Apollon studied her daughter with shrewd eyes. As a half-Veela and the appointed ambassador to Wizarding Britain, she understood the intuitive magic that ran through their bloodline better than most. If Fleur felt drawn to Britain, there might be more to it than childish whimsy. "We'll be meeting with Albus Dumbledore today," Apollon said, watching her daughter carefully. "He's a very powerful wizard." "I know who Dumbledore is, Maman," Fleur replied with the particular brand of exasperation only children can perfect. "Grandmere says he's wise but too fond of secrets." Apollon suppressed a smile. Her mother, Fleur's grandmother, was the current queen of the Veela enclave in southern France, and her assessment of Dumbledore was far more colorful than what Fleur had repeated. "Yes, well, today we will judge for ourselves," Apollon said diplomatically. "The meeting place is unusual, a Muggle home in Surrey." "Why would Dumbledore meet in a Muggle home?" Fleur wrinkled her perfect nose. "That's one of the questions we'll be asking," Apollon replied, her tone suggesting there were many such questions. Their driver, a nervous young wizard from the British Ministry, cleared his throat. "We'll be arriving in 5 minutes, Madame Delacour." Apollon nodded and straightened her already immaculate robes. As the car turned onto Privet Drive, Fleur pressed her face against the window, her earlier petulance forgotten as that strange feeling intensified, a pull, like an invisible thread tugging at something behind her ribcage. "Maman," she whispered, her voice suddenly tense. "Maman, he's here." "Who's here, ma chérie?" Apollon asked, concern edging into her voice. Fleur shook her head, unable to answer a question she didn't understand herself. But as the car rolled to a stop in front of number 4, the pulling sensation became almost painful. Without waiting for the driver, Fleur pushed open the door and stepped onto the perfectly ordinary suburban street. The moment her feet touched the ground, a wave of magic washed over her, raw, untamed, and somehow achingly familiar. Her Veela heritage responded instantly, sending tendrils of her own magic outward, seeking the source. "Fleur!" Her mother called, alarmed by her daughter's unusual behavior. But Fleur was already walking toward the house, drawn by an instinct older than civilization. Cornelius Fudge, Minister for Magic, arrived at Privet Drive precisely on schedule, accompanied by Albus Dumbledore. The wizened Hogwarts headmaster's eyes twinkled as he took in the aggressively normal appearance of number 4. "I must thank you again for agreeing to this meeting," Cornelius, Dumbledore said as they approached the front door. The Delacours are an influential family, and the Veela Nation has been somewhat remote in recent years. Yes, well, Fudge adjusted his lime green bowler hat nervously. Can't have magical beings feeling excluded from diplomatic channels. Bad for international relations. Though I must say, Dumbledore, I'm still not clear on why we're meeting here rather than at the Ministry. Dumbledore's expression remained pleasant, though something flickered behind his half-moon spectacles. The Delacours specifically requested to see where young Harry Potter lives. As his magical guardian, I thought it prudent to accommodate them. Fudge sputtered. Potter? What's he got to do with Veela diplomacy? I suspect we're about to find out, Dumbledore replied mildly as a ministry car pulled up behind them. Before either wizard could approach the vehicle, its door flew open and a young girl with silvery blonde hair emerged. The child stood completely still for a moment, then began walking toward the house with singular focus. Good heavens, what's she doing? Fudge muttered as an elegant woman exited the car after the girl, calling her name. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose fractionally as he observed the girl. Most interesting, he murmured. The front door of number 4 opened at that moment, revealing Vernon Dursley in his Sunday best, his mustache freshly combed and his expression hovering between obsequiousness and revulsion. Minister, he greeted Fudge with a stiff nod, pointedly ignoring Dumbledore. Welcome to our... Whatever else Vernon had planned to say was lost as the young Veela girl brushed past him without so much as a glance, entering the house like she owned it. Fleur. Apollon Delacour called, hurrying up the garden path. Please excuse my daughter, she's not usually so. She trailed off, her own Veela senses suddenly alert. Her eyes narrowed as she looked at Dumbledore. Where is the child? I assume you mean Harry? Dumbledore asked pleasantly. He should be inside with his family. Family, Apollon repeated, the single word somehow containing volumes of skepticism. Inside the house, Petunia Dursley's indignant shriek cut through the growing tension. Vernon! There's a foreign girl in our kitchen. Dumbledore stepped past a sputtering Vernon and into the house, followed closely by Apollon and a flustered Fudge. In the kitchen, they found a tableau that would alter the course of magical history in Britain. Harry Potter, small and thin in oversized clothes, standing perfectly still as the young Veela girl reached out one hand to touch his face. Say toy, Fleur whispered. It's you. Harry didn't understand the French words, but something in him recognized their meaning nonetheless. The dreams, the feeling of waiting for something he couldn't name, it all crystallized in this moment, with this strange, beautiful girl looking at him like he was something precious. Hello, he said softly. When Fleur's fingers made contact with Harry's cheek, a soft blue glow emanated from the point of connection, spreading outward like ripples on water. Apollon gasped, one hand flying to her mouth. Impossible, she breathed. She's found her mate. At her age. Her eyes snapped to Dumbledore, suddenly fierce. Why is he here? Why is he so thin? What have you done to this child? Dumbledore's customary serenity faltered for the first time. I assure you, Madame Delacour, you will address me as Ambassador Delacour, Apollon cut in, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. And you will explain why Harry Potter, a child under your magical guardianship, bears the signs of neglect and possible abuse. Petunia Dursley made a strangled sound. How dare you suggest, silence, Apollon hissed, and though no magic accompanied the command, Petunia found herself unable to continue. Meanwhile, Fleur and Harry remained in their own world, the blue light still connecting them, their eyes locked in mutual wonder. What's happening? Harry whispered. You are mine, Fleur replied simply, the words somehow translating themselves in Harry's mind. And I am yours. I don't understand, Harry said, though part of him did, the same part that had dreamed of her. I am Veela, Fleur explained, her English halting but clear. We recognize our mates by magic. You are my mate. Harry, who had never belonged to anyone, who had never been wanted by anyone, felt tears spring to his eyes. "Really?" he asked, his voice small and hopeful. Fleur nodded solemnly, then turned to face the adults, one hand still touching Harry's arm. "He stays with me now," she announced with all the imperious certainty of an 8-year-old Veela who had just found her magical mate. Cornelius Fudge looked ready to faint. "Dumbledore," he hissed. "What in Merlin's name is going on here?" Dumbledore stroked his long beard thoughtfully, studying the two children with sharp eyes that belied his grandfatherly appearance. "It appears," he said slowly, "that young Miss Delacour has recognized Harry as her mate. A most unexpected development." "Unexpected?" Apollin's voice was dangerous now. "Is that all you have to say? Your wards may hide this house from dark wizards, Dumbledore, but they do nothing to protect this child from the darkness within these walls." She gestured around the kitchen, which was covered in photographs of Dudley while Harry appeared in none. "Where does he sleep? Show me." Vernon Dursley puffed up indignantly. "Now see here, the cupboard under the stairs," Harry said quietly, before anyone could stop him. "That's my room." The silence that followed was absolute. Then, with deliberate calm that barely contained her fury, Apollon turned to Dumbledore. "Ambassador," Dumbledore began, but she cut him off with a raised hand. "As of this moment, Albus Dumbledore, you are in violation of the Treaty of Magical Guardianship established by the International Confederation of Wizards in 1709, she stated formally. "As a representative of the Veela Nation and in the name of the Veela Queen, I hereby declare a state of war between our nation and you personally for crimes against a Veela's recognized mate." Fudge's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. "War? Between a foreign magical species and a private British citizen? This is preposterous." "Dumbledore, tell her, the Veela Nation recognizes no distinction between a Veela and her mate," Apollon continued inexorably. "In harming Harry Potter, Albus Dumbledore has committed an act of aggression against all Veela. Our laws are clear and predate your ministry by centuries." She turned to Fudge. "Minister, Britain has signed magical treaties recognizing Veela sovereignty and customs. Will your government honor those treaties, or will the British Ministry of Magic also find itself at war with the Veela Nation?" Fudge paled. The political ramifications were spinning out of control. "Now, Ambassador, surely we can resolve this without declaring war. The declaration has been made," Apollon said crisply. She turned to Harry, her expression softening. "Harry, would you like to come with us?" "With Fleur?" Harry looked at the Dursleys, who were red-faced with a mixture of fear and indignation, then at Dumbledore, whose blue eyes had lost their twinkle, and finally at Fleur, who was still holding his arm, her young face serious but her eyes full of promise. "Yes," he said simply. "Please." Dumbledore stepped forward. "I'm afraid I cannot allow." A sudden burst of silvery fire erupted between Dumbledore and the children, causing everyone to step back in alarm. Fleur stood protectively in front of Harry, her small hands extended, wisps of blue-silver flame dancing around her fingers. "You will not touch him," she said, her English perfect in her anger. "He is mine to protect now." Dumbledore regarded the young Veela with new respect and caution. "Miss Delacour, I understand your feelings, but Harry's safety is clearly not your priority," Apollon finished for him. She drew her wand. "Minister Fudge, I request emergency international portkey authorization to transport Harry Potter to the French Veela Enclave, where he will receive medical attention and the protection of the Veela Queen." Fudge looked desperately between Dumbledore and Apollon, political calculations racing behind his eyes. That is, such authorization requires paperwork, and, Minister," Apollon's voice was soft but carried an unmistakable threat, "do not force my hand. The Veela Nation has maintained peaceful relations with Wizarding Britain for 3 centuries. Would you jeopardize that for one man's mistakes?" Fudge straightened his bowler hat nervously. "Dumbledore, surely there's something. I placed Harry with his aunt and uncle for his protection," Dumbledore said gravely. "Blood wards tied to his mother's sacrifice keep him safe from Voldemort and his followers." The name caused Fudge to flinch violently. He who must not be named is gone, Dumbledore. And these blood wards protect him from malnutrition? From being locked in a cupboard? Apollon challenged. From wearing clothes that would shame a house elf? The Dark Lord may be gone, but this child has not been safe. She turned to Fudge. Minister, I formally request asylum for Harry Potter under the Magical Refugee Convention of 1832, to which Britain is a signatory. As his mate's mother and a diplomatic representative, I have standing to make this request. Fudge looked cornered. I'll need to consult with the Department of International Magical Cooperation. You may consult while we travel, Apollon said firmly. I will not leave this child here one moment longer. Throughout this exchange, Harry had remained close to Fleur, watching with wide eyes as these adults fought over him, not because they didn't want him, but because they did. It was bewildering and wonderful and terrifying all at once. What about my things? He asked quietly. Apollon looked at him, her anger momentarily replaced by heartbreak. What things would you like to bring, Harry? Harry hesitated, then pointed toward the cupboard under the stairs. I have a blanket. And some broken soldiers Dudley didn't want. The simple statement hung in the air, damning in its innocent delivery. Apollon's nostrils flared, and the air around her shimmered with barely contained Veela fury. Accio Harry Potter's belongings, she said, her wand moving in a precise pattern. The cupboard door burst open, and a threadbare blanket flew out, along with a small collection of broken toy soldiers, a cracked pair of glasses, and a crude drawing of a flying motorcycle. These items assembled themselves into a neat pile at Harry's feet. Is that everything? Apollon asked gently. Harry nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Madame Delacour, Dumbledore said, his voice grave, I understand your concern, but removing Harry from his blood relatives will disable protections that have kept him safe from dark forces, and exposed him to different dark forces, Apollon countered. No, Dumbledore. The Veela Nation claims this child as one of our own through his bond with my daughter. We will protect him from your Dark Lord and from those who would use him as a pawn in their games, including you. She turned to Fudge, who was sweating profusely. Minister, your decision. Fudge looked at Dumbledore, then at the two children, one a fierce young Veela practically radiating protective magic, the other a too small, too thin boy with famous green eyes and a lightning bolt scar, looking more hopeful than he had any right to be. Temporary asylum granted, Fudge said finally, ignoring Dumbledore's sharp intake of breath. Pending formal review by the Department of International Magical Cooperation and the Wisengamot. Minister, Dumbledore began. No, Dumbledore, Fudge said, surprising everyone with his firmness. I cannot ignore a formal asylum request from a recognized magical nation without risking international incident. And frankly, he added, glancing at the cupboard under the stairs, there are questions that need answering. Apollon didn't wait for further discussion. She removed an ornate silver bracelet from her wrist and held it out to the children. This is a diplomatic portkey that will take us to the French ministry. Harry, Fleur, both of you touch it, please. Harry hesitated, looking at Dumbledore, who had been a silent presence in the background of his life for years without his knowledge. The old wizard's eyes were sad but resolute. We will speak again soon, Harry, Dumbledore said quietly. There are things you need to know. He will learn what he needs to know when he is ready, Apollon said firmly. Not before. Harry reached out and touched the silver bracelet, his other hand still firmly in Fleur's grasp. The last thing he saw before the portkey activated was Dumbledore's troubled face, Fudge's anxious one, and the Dursleys' expressions of mingled relief and fear. Then Privet Drive disappeared in a swirl of color and magic, and Harry Potter began a journey that would change everything. The French Ministry of Magic was nothing like Harry had imagined, largely because he hadn't known there was such a thing as a Ministry of Magic until a few hours ago. The grand atrium was filled with witches and wizards in elegant robes, magical fountains that defied gravity, and enchanted paper airplanes zooming overhead carrying messages. This way, Apollon directed, leading the children through the bustling space. People stopped to stare as they passed, not at Harry, as would have happened in Britain, but at Apollon, whose diplomatic status clearly commanded respect, and at Fleur, who walked proudly with her hand still firmly clasping Harry's. They were ushered into a private chamber where a tall, distinguished wizard with a pointed beard awaited them. Ambassador Delacour, he greeted Apollon in French, his eyes moving curiously to the children. The British ministry has already contacted us. They're most distressed. Minister Rousseau, Apollon replied formally. May I present Harry Potter, whom my daughter Fleur has recognized as her mate. The French Minister for Magic's eyebrows rose nearly to his hairline. At their age? This is unprecedented. Not entirely, Apollon said. There are accounts in our oldest histories. What is unprecedented is the condition in which we found him. Her voice hardened. Albus Dumbledore has much to answer for. Minister Rousseau's expression grew serious. The British ministry is demanding his immediate return. They claim jurisdiction over the boy who lived. They abandoned that claim when they allowed him to be mistreated under their watch, Apollon said firmly. I have invoked the Veela Nation's protection. My mother will arrive shortly to formalize our position. At the mention of her grandmother, Fleur straightened proudly. Grandmere will make them understand, she said confidently to Harry, who smiled uncertainly in return. Harry needs medical attention, Apollon continued. I request a healer before we proceed to the enclave. Minister Rousseau nodded and summoned an aide. Within minutes, a kindly witch in pale blue robes entered the chamber. This is Healer Moreau, Rousseau introduced her. She can conduct a preliminary examination while we await the Veela Queen. Harry watched nervously as the healer approached with her wand drawn. It's all right, Fleur whispered. She will help you feel better. I just want to cast a few diagnostic spells, Healer Moreau explained gently, switching to English for Harry's benefit. It won't hurt at all. Harry nodded hesitantly, and the healer waved her wand in intricate patterns while murmuring in Latin. Glowing symbols appeared in the air above Harry's head, causing the healer's professional demeanor to falter momentarily. Malnutrition, she said quietly to Apollon. Numerous improperly healed minor fractures. Vitamin deficiencies. And. Her voice dropped even lower. There's something else. Something dark, centered around the scar. Apollon's expression darkened. Can you address the physical issues immediately? Some of them, yes. The healer reached into her bag and removed several vials of colorful potions. These will begin the process of correcting the nutritional deficiencies and strengthening his bones. The rest will require a more extensive treatment plan. And the darkness? Apollon asked carefully. Healer Moreau shook her head. That requires further examination by specialists. I've never seen anything quite like it. Harry, who could hear their conversation despite their lowered voices, felt a chill run through him. Is something wrong with me? He asked. Fleur squeezed his hand. None. You are perfect, she said with absolute conviction. The scar is from the bad wizard, but it is not you. Harry touched his lightning bolt scar self-consciously. How do you know? I can feel you, Fleur said simply. The scar feels different. Cold, when you are warm. Before Harry could ask what she meant, the chamber doors opened again, and everyone in the room straightened as a regal woman entered. Though she appeared no older than Apollon, there was something ancient in her eyes, a power and wisdom that transcended her physical form. Grandmere! Fleur exclaimed, her face lighting up. The Veela Queen smiled warmly at her granddaughter before her gaze shifted to Harry. Her eyes widened fractionally, the only indication of surprise she allowed herself. So, she said, her voice musical yet commanding, this is the boy. Harry, who had never felt so thoroughly examined in his life, fought the urge to hide behind Fleur. Your Majesty, Apollon began formally, may I present Harry Potter? Harry, this is Queen Celeste of the Veela Nation, Fleur's grandmother. Hello, Harry said tentatively, unsure if he should bow or curtsy or something else entirely. Queen Celeste approached him slowly, her movements fluid as water. She knelt before him, bringing herself to eye level, a gesture that made Minister Rousseau inhale sharply. "Harry Potter," she said, studying his face. "You have had a difficult journey thus far, have you not?" Harry nodded, unable to look away from her silvery eyes, so like Fleur's, yet filled with the wisdom of centuries. The Queen extended one graceful hand, pausing just before touching his scar. "May I?" Harry nodded again, and her cool fingertips brushed his forehead. A shiver ran through him, not unpleasant, but strange, like standing at the edge of a vast ocean. "Apollon," the Queen said without looking away from Harry, "you were right to bring him to us." "Then you confirm it?" Apollon asked intently. "The mate bond?" "It is true and it is deep," Queen Celeste confirmed, finally lowering her hand. "Older magic than even we fully understand." She turned to Fleur with a gentle smile. "You have found him early, little flame. There is much growing you both must do before the bond can fully mature." "But he stays with us?" Fleur asked anxiously. "He stays with us," the Queen affirmed. She stood gracefully and addressed Minister Rousseau. "The Veela Nation formally requests sanctuary for Harry Potter within our sovereign territory. In return, we offer assurances that he will not be hidden from the magical world, merely protected until such time as his safety can be guaranteed elsewhere." Minister Rousseau bowed slightly. "The French ministry acknowledges the Veela Nation's claim and will support your petition against Britain. However," he added cautiously, "this will cause significant diplomatic tension." "The tension already exists," Queen Celeste said dismissively. "Albus Dumbledore has overstepped his authority for too long, and Britain has allowed it. Perhaps this will be the catalyst for necessary change." She turned to Harry once more. "Harry Potter, do you wish to come with us to the Veela Enclave? To learn our ways and be protected by our magic while you grow strong?" Harry looked at Fleur, who was watching him with hopeful eyes, then at Apollon, whose righteous anger on his behalf had been the first time he could remember an adult standing up for him, and finally at the Queen, who regarded him not as a burden or a weapon or a savior, but simply as a child in need of protection. "Yes," he said, his voice stronger than before. "I want to go with you." Queen Celeste nodded, satisfied. "Then it is settled. Healer Moreau, you will accompany us to the Enclave to continue Harry's treatment. Minister Rousseau, please inform the British Ministry of our decision. Apollon, prepare the diplomatic response to what will undoubtedly be a storm of protests." As the adults moved to carry out her instructions, the Queen looked down at the two children, her expression softening. "And you too," she said more gently, "must be hungry after such an eventful morning." With a wave of her hand, a small table appeared, laden with fruits, pastries, and 2 goblets of what looked like chilled juice. Harry's eyes widened at the casual display of magic. "Eat," the Queen encouraged. "The portkey to the Enclave will be ready soon, and you will need your strength for what lies ahead." As Harry tentatively reached for a pastry, Fleur still at his side, he felt something he had never truly experienced before, the sensation of being safe, of being wanted, of belonging. Whatever came next, whatever this war with Dumbledore meant, whatever dark thing lurked in his scar, he would face it with Fleur and her family beside him. For the first time in his memory, Harry Potter had found a home. In the days following Harry's departure, Albus Dumbledore faced the most serious challenge to his authority in decades. The Wisengamot had been called into emergency session, the Daily Prophet was running sensational headlines about the boy who was stolen, and international magical communities were watching with keen interest as Britain's most celebrated wizard found himself on the defensive. The boy must be returned immediately, Lucius Malfoy insisted, his pale face flushed with feigned concern. For his own safety, of course. Of course, Dumbledore replied mildly. Yet I find myself wondering why the safety of Harry Potter is suddenly of such concern to you, Lucius, when you have never inquired about his welfare before. Malfoy's lip curled. The welfare of our world savior is everyone's concern, Dumbledore. Or have you forgotten that? The Wisingamot chambers hummed with murmured conversations. Minister Fudge, seated in his official chair, looked miserable. The question before this body, Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, stated firmly, is not merely about Harry Potter's return, but about the circumstances that led to this international incident. Albus, there are disturbing reports about the boy's living conditions. Dumbledore sighed heavily. I placed Harry with his mother's sister to activate ancient blood protections. While I regret that his upbringing was not as nurturing as I had hoped, his physical safety from dark forces was my primary concern. And what of his safety from his guardians? Augusta Longbottom demanded. Merlin's beard, Albus, a cupboard. Is this true? Dumbledore had no satisfactory answer. The truth was that he had known the Dursleys were not kind to Harry, but he had underestimated the extent of their neglect. The blood wards had been necessary, or so he had convinced himself, to protect Harry from the remaining Death Eaters and from the fragment of Voldemort's soul he suspected resided in the boy's scar. But now, faced with the evidence of his miscalculation, even the great Albus Dumbledore found himself at a loss. I made a judgment based on the information available to me at the time, he said finally. In retrospect, I should have monitored his situation more closely. More closely? Tiberius Ogden snorted. You shouldn't have put him there at all. There were magical families who would have raised him properly, and made him a target, Dumbledore countered. Or worse, spoiled him into believing his own legend. That was not your decision to make alone, Amelia Bones said firmly. James and Lily Potter left a will, which was sealed on your authority. I move that the will be unsealed immediately so we can determine their wishes regarding their son's guardianship. The motion passed overwhelmingly, despite objections from Dumbledore's supporters. Within hours, the Potter will was retrieved from the Department of Mysteries and brought before the Wisingamot. What it revealed caused an uproar that even Dumbledore's considerable political acumen could not quell. And in the event of our deaths, custody of our son, Harry James Potter, should pass to his godfather, Sirius Black. Should Sirius be unable to care for Harry, custody should pass to the following individuals in this order: Alice and Frank Longbottom, Minerva McGonagall, Andromeda and Ted Tonks. Under no circumstances is our son to be placed with Petunia and Vernon Dursley. The reading of this section was met with stunned silence, followed by an eruption of voices. Sirius Black. The mass murderer. The Longbottoms are in St. Mungo's. McGonagall was right there at Hogwarts. You deliberately violated their will, Albus. Dumbledore raised a hand, calling for silence. I did what I believed necessary to protect Harry from Voldemort's followers. The blood protection was apparently not protecting him from the people who were supposed to care for him, Augusta Longbottom interrupted fiercely. And what of Sirius Black? He never received a trial, did he, Albus? Convenient, that. The accusation hung in the air, damning in its implication. Fudge, seeing which way the wind was blowing, seized the opportunity to distance himself from the growing scandal. I move that we immediately review the case of Sirius Black, he announced. If there was no trial, there must be one now. And I further move that we formally acknowledge the Veela Nation's temporary custody of Harry Potter until such time as this matter is resolved. The motion passed by a substantial margin. Dumbledore, for the first time in many years, found himself outmaneuvered. As the session adjourned, he remained seated, contemplating how quickly his carefully constructed plans had unraveled. Minerva McGonagall approached him, her lips pressed into a thin line of disappointment. I told you they were the worst sort of muggles, she said quietly. I watched them all day before you left him there. I told you. Dumbledore nodded wearily. You did, Minerva. I should have listened. What happens now, Albus? She asked, her anger tempered by decades of friendship and respect. Now, Dumbledore said, rising to his feet, I must try to make amends. For Harry's sake, and for the sake of the future we are all fighting to protect. As he left the Wisingamot chambers, Dumbledore's mind was already working, recalculating, adjusting to this new reality. The Veela declaration of war against him personally was unprecedented but not insurmountable. The revelation about Sirius Black was more problematic. If the man was innocent, as the Potters will suggested, then Dumbledore had allowed an innocent man to suffer in Azkaban for years. But the greatest concern remained Harry himself. The boy was a Horcrux, of this, Dumbledore was now certain, and his destiny was inextricably linked to Voldemort's downfall. The Veela bond complicated matters considerably. If Harry was indeed Fleur Delacour's mate, their magics would be interconnected in ways even Dumbledore did not fully understand. As he stepped into the Ministry atrium, Dumbledore was met by a flurry of reporters, their quick quills poised eagerly. Professor Dumbledore. Is it true the Veela have declared war on you? Will you try to reclaim Harry Potter by force? Did you knowingly violate the Potter's will? Dumbledore regarded them calmly, his blue eyes lacking their customary twinkle. I have always acted in what I believe to be Harry Potter's best interests, he said carefully. If I have made mistakes in that regard, I will work tirelessly to correct them. As for the Veela Nation, I hope we can resolve our differences diplomatically, for Harry's sake. With that, he disapparated, leaving the reporters clamoring for more and the wizarding world buzzing with speculation about what would happen next in the unprecedented magical custody battle over the boy who lived. The Veela enclave was nothing like Harry had imagined, and he had been imagining quite a lot during the journey from the French ministry. What he found was a hidden valley in the Pyrenees Mountains, accessible only by specific magical means, where ancient stone buildings with living plants growing over them mingled with more modern structures crafted from white marble and crystal. This is your home? He asked Fleur in wonder as they approached the central palace, a breathtaking edifice that seemed to capture and amplify the mountain sunlight. One of them, Fleur replied, watching his reaction with pleasure. We also have a house near Paris, but this is where the Veela gather. This is where our magic is strongest. Harry could feel it, a humming in the air, like music just below the range of hearing. It made his skin tingle pleasantly and seemed to resonate with something inside him, something that had always been there but had never had a chance to awaken. Queen Celeste led them through arched doorways and past Veela of all ages, most of whom stopped to stare curiously at Harry. Unlike the stares he was accustomed to from the Dursleys and their neighbors, these gazes held no judgment or disdain, only interest and something like recognition. They can sense the bond, Apollon explained, noticing Harry's confusion. To them, you are already family. The thought of family, real family, not the grudging tolerance of the Dursleys, made Harry's throat tight with emotion. He glanced at Fleur, who had barely left his side since their first meeting, and found her smiling at him with a certainty that belied her young age. Here we are, Queen Celeste announced as they entered a circular chamber with a domed ceiling enchanted to show the sky above. The Healing Hall. Several Veela in shimmering robes approached, bowing respectfully to the Queen before turning their attention to Harry. This is Harry Potter, Queen Celeste introduced him. My granddaughter's mate and now under our protection. He requires healing and evaluation, particularly regarding the curse scar. The eldest of the healers, a Veela with silver hair and eyes like polished amber, stepped forward to study Harry. I am Emmeline, head healer of the Enclave, she said in accented English. May I examine you, young one? Harry nodded, clinging to Fleur's hand for reassurance. It won't hurt, Fleur promised. Emmeline guided Harry to a cushioned table in the center of the chamber. Lie down, please, she instructed gently. And try to relax. As Harry complied, the other healers moved to positions around the table, their hands extended but not touching him. Emmeline stood at his head, her fingers hovering over his scar. We will begin with a deep diagnostic scan, she explained. You may feel a warmth or tingling, but it should not be uncomfortable. If anything hurts, tell us immediately. At her signal, the healers began to sing, a haunting, wordless melody that seemed to resonate with the very stone of the chamber. Threads of silver blue light emerged from their fingertips, weaving together above Harry's body in intricate patterns. Harry felt the magic wash over him like warm water, soothing and gentle. He closed his eyes, allowing himself to relax fully for what felt like the first time in his life. The singing continued for several minutes, the patterns of light growing more complex as the healers delved deeper into Harry's physical and magical condition. Suddenly, when the magic reached his scar, Harry felt a sharp, cold sensation, like an icicle being pressed against his forehead. He gasped, his eyes flying open. The healer's expressions had changed from concentration to concern. "Stop," Emmeline commanded, and the singing ceased abruptly. The threads of light remained, however, hovering above Harry with a particular concentration of dark, angry red light pulsing over his scar. "What is it?" Apollon asked tensely. Emmeline's face was grave. "There is a fragment of foreign soul attached to the boy's scar," she said quietly. "Dark magic of the most despicable kind." Queen Celeste moved closer, her eyes fixed on the red light. "A Horcrux," she said, the word itself seeming to dim the light in the chamber. "A what?" Harry asked, fear creeping into his voice. Fleur squeezed his hand tighter. "It's not you," she said fiercely. "It's the bad wizard who hurt your parents." "Voldemort?" Harry whispered. The adults exchanged grim looks. "Yes, child," Queen Celeste confirmed. "When he tried to kill you and failed, a piece of his soul broke away and attached itself to you. This is old, terrible magic, a deliberate splitting of one's soul through murder to achieve a form of immortality." Harry felt sick. "He's inside me." "Not for long," Emmeline said with determination. "The Veela have encountered Horcruxes before, in the long centuries of our existence. We have ways to remove them without harming the host." Hope surged through Harry. "You can get rid of it?" "We can," Emmeline assured him. "But the procedure is complex and will require preparation. For tonight, we will focus on your physical healing and place protective wards around your scar to prevent the soul fragment from influencing you." As the healers resumed their work, now focused on Harry's malnourishment, bone damage, and eyesight, Apollon drew the Queen aside. "Dumbledore must have known," she said in a low, angry voice. "This explains why he was so insistent on controlling the boy's upbringing." Queen Celeste nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps. Or perhaps he knew something was wrong but not what. Even Albus Dumbledore's knowledge has limits." She watched as the healers worked, her expression calculating. "Regardless, this changes the nature of our conflict with him. If he believes the boy must die to defeat Voldemort." "Die?" Apollon repeated, aghast. "Surely not. It is the traditional way to destroy a Horcrux," the Queen said grimly. "Fortunately, Veela magic offers alternatives that wizarding magic does not." She laid a calming hand on her daughter's arm. "Do not fear, Apollon. We will cleanse the boy without harming him. And when Dumbledore learns this, he will have to reconsider his plans." Later that evening, after Harry had been given healing potions and placed in a comfortable chamber adjacent to Fleur's, Apollon found her daughter sitting by his bedside, watching him sleep. "He looks better already," Fleur said without looking up. It was true. Some color had returned to Harry's cheeks, and the healing spells had begun to correct years of malnutrition. The boy looked peaceful for the first time since they'd met him. "Fleur," Apollon said gently, sitting beside her daughter. "We need to talk about this bond between you." Fleur nodded, her young face solemn. "I know it's unusual to find one's mate so young." "It's more than unusual, it's almost unheard of," Apollon corrected. "The mate bond typically manifests after a Veela comes of age, not in childhood." "But you believe it's real?" Fleur asked, a hint of vulnerability creeping into her voice. "Your grandmother confirmed it, and she has never been wrong about such things," Apollon assured her. "But you must understand what this means, ma chérie. The bond will not fully mature until you are both adults. Until then, it is a connection of magic and friendship, not the romantic bond it will eventually become." Fleur nodded. "I know, maman. I need to protect him." She looked down at the sleeping boy. When I saw him in that house, with those terrible people, I felt something I've never felt before. Like my magic wanted to burn everything until he was safe. Apollon smiled sadly, stroking her daughter's hair. That is the Veela in you recognizing what is yours. But remember, just as he is yours, you are his. Your lives are now intertwined in ways even we don't fully understand. Will Dumbledore try to take him back? Fleur asked, her hand instinctively moving to Harry's as though to prevent just that. He will try, Apollon admitted. But he will not succeed. The Veela Nation has declared war, and we do not make such declarations lightly. What does that mean, war with Dumbledore? Fleur asked. It means we will use every diplomatic, legal, and if necessary, magical means at our disposal to protect Harry from his influence, Apollon explained. It is not a war of violence, but of wills and rights and ancient laws. And will we win? Apollon looked at her daughter's determined face and the sleeping boy whose destiny had become entangled with theirs. We must, she said simply. For both your sakes. As if sensing they were talking about him, Harry stirred in his sleep, his hand tightening around Fleur's. Even in unconsciousness, the bond between them was growing, strengthening, preparing them for whatever lay ahead. In that moment, watching her daughter and the boy who had so unexpectedly become part of their family, Apollon renewed her silent vow, Albus Dumbledore, for all his power and influence, would not reclaim Harry Potter. The Veela had claimed him now, and they protected their own. In the darkest cell of Azkaban prison, Sirius Black huddled in the corner, clinging to the one thought that had kept him sane through years of torment, his innocence. It wasn't a happy thought, the Dementors couldn't take it from him, but it was cold comfort in the face of unending misery. Today, however, something was different. The constant pressure of despair had lifted slightly, as though the Dementors had been called away. And there were voices, human voices, approaching his cell. Review of his case ordered by the Wizengamot itself. No trial, can you believe it? Just thrown in here on Crouch's orders. But he was found at the scene, laughing like a madman. 12 Muggles dead and Pettigrew blown to bits. Still should have had a trial. Basic magical rights and all that. The voices grew louder, accompanied by footsteps. Sirius raised his head, his matted hair falling around his gaunt face as the cell door creaked open. 2 Aurors stood there, wands drawn but not pointed directly at him. Behind them was a witch in official-looking robes, a monocle fixed to her right eye. Prisoner Black, she said crisply, I am Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. I am here to inform you that new evidence has come to light, and your case is being reviewed by the Wizengamot. Sirius stared at her, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. His voice, when he finally found it, was a raspy whisper from years of disuse. What evidence? The will of James and Lily Potter has been unsealed, Bones replied, watching his reaction carefully. It names you as Harry Potter's godfather and legal guardian in the event of their deaths. It also contains statements that contradict the official account of your involvement in their murders. Sirius felt a surge of emotion so powerful it nearly knocked him back. Harry, he croaked. Where is Harry? Is he safe? Amelia Bones' expression revealed nothing. Mr. Potter's current whereabouts are part of what we need to discuss. You will be transported to a ministry holding cell pending a formal hearing. If you cooperate fully, including submitting to questioning under Veritaserum, this matter may be resolved quickly. Sirius struggled to his feet, his legs weak from years of confinement. I'll take Veritaserum right now, he said urgently. I'll tell you everything. Pettigrew was the secret keeper. He betrayed them, not me. He's an animagus, a rat. He cut off his own finger and blew up the street and escaped into the sewers. Save it for the formal questioning, Black, one of the Aurors cut in gruffly, though he looked somewhat shaken by the prisoner's vehemence. I need to know about Harry, Sirius insisted as they placed magical restraints on his wrists, gentler than the ones he'd worn for years, but restraints nonetheless. Please. Is he safe? Who's been caring for him? Amelia Bones studied him for a moment, then seemed to make a decision. Harry Potter was placed with his Muggle relatives after your arrest. Recently, however, he has been relocated. Relocated? Sirius repeated, alarm cutting through his mental fog. What does that mean? Where is my godson? He is currently under the protection of the Veela Nation, Bones said carefully. Following some concerns about his treatment by his Muggle guardians. Treatment? Sirius growled, a flash of his old fire returning. Was he being mistreated? Who placed him with Lily's sister? Petunia hated magic. The Aurors exchanged uncomfortable glances, and even Amelia Bones looked discomfited. These are matters to be discussed during your formal questioning, she said. For now, know that Harry is safe and well cared for. As they led him from the cell that had been his home for nearly 4 years, Sirius felt something he had almost forgotten, hope. If the Potters' will had been unsealed, if his case was being reviewed, if Harry was away from Petunia. Dumbledore, he said suddenly, stopping in his tracks. Dumbledore knew I wasn't the secret keeper. I told him when they made the switch to Peter. Amelia Bones' monocle glinted in the dim light of the prison corridor. Did you, indeed? She murmured. That is, most interesting, Mr. Black. Most interesting indeed. As they continued toward the boat that would take him away from Azkaban, Sirius felt his determination solidify into a single, burning purpose: find Harry, protect Harry, be the godfather James and Lily had trusted him to be. Whatever had happened in the years of his imprisonment, he would make it right. For Harry. For Lily and James. And for himself, the man he was supposed to have been before tragedy and betrayal had derailed his life. Albus Dumbledore sat alone in his office at Hogwarts, the portraits of former headmasters unusually silent as they watched him contemplate the silver instruments on his desk. One in particular, a delicate device that monitored the blood wards around Privet Drive, had gone still and dark. The wards were gone, along with the protection they had provided. Harry Potter was beyond his reach, and with him, the carefully constructed plans that Dumbledore had been building since that fateful Halloween night. A soft knock at the door broke his reverie. Enter, he called. Severus Snape swept into the office, his sallow face even more drawn than usual. You summoned me, headmaster. Yes, Severus, Dumbledore said heavily. I have a matter of great importance to discuss with you, one that concerns both Lily Potter's son and your vow. Snape's face hardened at the mention of Lily. What about the boy? He has been removed from his relatives' care by the Veela Nation, Dumbledore explained. They claim their right through an apparent mate bond between young Harry and Fleur Delacour's daughter. Snape's eyebrows rose fractionally. A mate bond? At his age? That's unprecedented, yes, Dumbledore agreed. But the Veela Queen herself has confirmed it. And why should this concern me? Snape asked, though the tightness around his eyes suggested he already knew the answer. Because the Veela have discovered something about Harry that I have long suspected, Dumbledore said quietly. When Voldemort attempted to kill him, a fragment of his soul attached itself to the boy. Harry is, unintentionally, a Horcrux. Snape went very still, his already pale face losing what little color it had. A Horcrux, he repeated flatly. The Dark Lord created a Horcrux using Lily's son. Not intentionally, I believe, Dumbledore clarified. Rather, his soul was so unstable from previous Horcrux creations that when the killing curse rebounded, it fractured, and a piece latched onto the only living thing in the room. And you've known this? Snape's voice was dangerous now. You've known that the boy carries a piece of the Dark Lord's soul, and you said nothing? I suspected, Dumbledore corrected. I had no way to confirm it without risking harm to Harry. And the Veela? Snape demanded. What do they intend to do with this information? They believe they can remove the Horcrux without harming Harry, Dumbledore said. Veela magic is different from our own, more primal, more instinctive. If they succeed. He trailed off, lost in thought. If they succeed, then your grand plan to use the boy as a sacrificial lamb becomes unnecessary, Snape finished for him, a bitter edge to his voice. Is that why you're so troubled, headmaster? Because the Veela might save Lily's son and disrupt your schemes? Dumbledore looked at him sharply. My concern is for the greater good, Severus. If the Veela fail, or if their method doesn't truly destroy the Horcrux, then what? Snape challenged. You'll swoop in and reclaim the boy? Train him to die at the right moment? I had hoped, Dumbledore said with uncharacteristic heat, that there might be a way to remove the Horcrux without harming Harry. But the only known methods are destruction beyond magical repair. The Veela claim to have alternatives, but you don't trust them, Snape finished. Because they've challenged your authority. Because they've declared war on you personally. Dumbledore sighed heavily. The Veela declaration of war is a complication, yes. But my concern is genuine, Severus. If they fail, if the Horcrux remains, Voldemort will eventually return. He will target Harry. And without the blood protection, without proper training, so train him, Snape said bluntly. Negotiate with the Veela. If they can remove the Horcrux, let them. If the Dark Lord returns regardless, prepare the boy to face him, not as a sacrifice, but as a warrior. Dumbledore studied his potions master thoughtfully. I'm surprised, Severus. I would have thought you'd be pleased to have Harry Potter far from Hogwarts. I promised to protect Lily's son, Snape said stiffly. I did not specify the method. A ghost of a smile touched Dumbledore's lips. Very well. I shall attempt to negotiate with the Veela. But I suspect they will not be easily swayed, particularly Fleur Delacour. She was most displeased with the conditions in which she found Harry. What conditions? Snape asked sharply. Dumbledore hesitated, then seemed to deflate slightly. It appears that Petunia and her husband were not as nurturing as I had hoped. Harry was made to sleep in a cupboard under the stairs. There is evidence of neglect, perhaps even abuse. Snape's face went rigid with fury. A cupboard, he hissed. Lily's son. And you left him there. I monitored the blood wards, not the boy's daily life, Dumbledore admitted. A mistake, in retrospect. A mistake, Snape repeated, his voice dripping with contempt. And now you've lost him to the Veela, who will no doubt tell him exactly what you've done, or failed to do. Did you consider that, in your grand schemes? That the boy might grow up hating you rather than trusting you? Dumbledore's blue eyes were troubled as they met Snape's black ones. I considered many possibilities, Severus. But I confess, I did not foresee this particular outcome. Then perhaps, Snape said coldly, the great Albus Dumbledore is not as omniscient as he believes himself to be. With that, he turned on his heel and swept from the office, his black robes billowing behind him. Alone once more, Dumbledore turned to Fawkes, who watched him with unblinking eyes from his perch. What would you do, old friend? He murmured. If the boy can be saved, if the Horcrux can be removed without harm to him, does that change everything? Or nothing at all? The phoenix trilled softly, a sound of both comfort and challenge. Dumbledore nodded, as though the bird had given him a direct answer. You're right, of course, he sighed. I must see for myself. I must speak with Harry, with the Veela Queen. If there is another way. He straightened, some of his usual determination returning. But first, there is the matter of Sirius Black to address. If he is indeed innocent, as the Potters will suggest, then I have much to answer for there as well. As night fell over Hogwarts, Albus Dumbledore began composing 2 letters, one to Amelia Bones regarding Sirius Black, and one to Queen Celeste of the Veela, requesting a diplomatic meeting. The war declared against him might yet be averted, if only he could demonstrate his true intentions, not control for its own sake, but protection of both Harry and the wizarding world he would someday need to save. Whether the Veela would believe him was another matter entirely. Chapter 2, the challenge. The morning sun streamed through crystal windows, casting rainbow patterns across Harry's bedroom floor. 3 weeks had passed since his arrival at the Veela Enclave, and each dawn still brought a moment of disbelief. He would wake expecting the cramped darkness of his cupboard, only to find himself in a spacious chamber with a real bed, walls painted with scenes of mountains and forests that actually moved, and a window that overlooked a breathtaking valley. Harry sat up and reached for his glasses on the bedside table, new ones, properly fitted to his face. The healers had explained that his eyesight could eventually be corrected completely, but the treatment would take time and his magic needed to stabilize first. A soft knock came at his door. "Harry? Are you awake?" Fleur's voice called. "Yes, come in," he answered, still marveling at being allowed, encouraged, even, to speak at normal volume. Fleur entered, already dressed in a flowing blue tunic over slim trousers. At 8 years old, she carried herself with a grace that seemed both natural and impossible. "Grandmere wants to see us after breakfast," she announced, sitting on the edge of his bed. "The British Ministry has sent another delegation." Harry's stomach tightened. "Are they going to take me back?" Fleur's hand found his, a gesture that had become instinctual between them. "Non," she said firmly. "No one will take you anywhere you don't want to go." "But..." She hesitated, something unusual for her. "Professor Dumbledore is with them this time." Harry stared at her, conflicting emotions churning inside him. Dumbledore, the man who had left him with the Dursleys, who had been his magical guardian but never once checked on him. Yet also the wizard who, according to the stories he'd been told, had defeated the dark wizard Grindelwald and was considered the greatest sorcerer of the age. "Do I have to see him?" Harry asked quietly. "Only if you want to," Fleur assured him. "Maman says it's your choice. But Grandmere thinks it might be good to hear what he has to say." Harry nodded slowly. In his 3 weeks with the Veela, he'd learned that Queen Celeste rarely gave advice without good reason. "Will you be there too?" Fleur squeezed his hand, her blue eyes fierce. "I won't leave your side." The simple promise settled something in Harry. He swung his legs out of bed, feeling more determined. "Then let's have breakfast. I don't want to meet Albus Dumbledore on an empty stomach." Fleur laughed, the sound like silver bells. "That's the spirit. Oh, and healer Emmeline says your first purification ritual will be tomorrow. She says you're strong enough now." The purification ritual, the first step in removing the soul fragment from his scar. Harry touched his forehead reflexively. Since learning what lurked there, he'd become acutely aware of the scar in a way he hadn't been before, sometimes imagining he could feel the foreign presence watching, waiting, corrupting. "Will it hurt?" he asked, not for the first time. "Non," Fleur said confidently. "Veela healing magic doesn't cause pain. Grandmere says it might feel strange, but not painful." She tugged at his hand. "Come on. If we're late to breakfast, Gabrielle will eat all the pain au chocolate." Harry smiled at the mention of Fleur's 2-year-old sister, who had taken to following him around the enclave whenever she could escape her nurses, babbling in a mix of French and toddler speak that Harry found surprisingly easy to understand. As they walked the sunlit corridors to the dining hall, Harry felt that now familiar warmth in his chest, the sense of belonging, of rightness, that had been growing stronger with each day spent in the enclave. Whatever challenges awaited him today, he would face them with Fleur and her family beside him. For the first time in his short life, Harry Potter wasn't alone. Albus Dumbledore stood at the edge of the Veela Enclave's reception grounds, feeling the subtle press of ancient magic against his own. It wasn't hostile, precisely, more cautious, evaluating. The wards were unlike any he had encountered in his long life, neither wizard-made nor goblin-crafted, but something older, more primal. "Remarkable," he murmured, earning a sharp glance from Amelia Bones, who stood beside him. "Remember why we're here, Albus," she said quietly. "This is a diplomatic mission to discuss Harry Potter's status, not an academic excursion." "Of course," Dumbledore agreed mildly. though one can appreciate the magical achievement while still maintaining focus on our purpose. The third member of their delegation, Cornelius Fudge, fidgeted nervously with his bowler hat. "I still don't see why we couldn't have held this meeting on neutral ground," he complained. "Coming here puts us at a disadvantage." "On the contrary," Dumbledore replied. "By accepting the Veela Queen's invitation to her realm, we demonstrate good faith. And given the nature of their grievances, I believe such a gesture was necessary." "Their grievances included declaring war on you personally," Bones pointed out dryly. "A rather extreme diplomatic position." Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. "The Veela have always been known for their passionate nature, Amelia. I take no offense." Before anyone could respond, the ornate gates before them swung open silently. Apollon Delacour stood in the entryway, regal in formal robes of midnight blue embroidered with silver stars. "Ambassador Delacour," Fudge greeted her with forced joviality. "How good of you to receive us." "Minister Fudge," Apollon acknowledged coolly. Her gaze moved to Amelia Bones. "Madam Bones." Finally, her eyes settled on Dumbledore, and a distinct chill entered her voice. "Professor Dumbledore." "Madame Delacour," Dumbledore inclined his head respectfully. "Thank you for arranging this meeting. I hope we can resolve our differences for young Harry's benefit." Something dangerous flashed in Apollon's eyes. "We shall see," she said. "Please follow me. The Queen awaits you in the council chamber." As they passed through the gates, Dumbledore felt the Enclave's magic wash over him more fully, assessing, cataloguing, and most interestingly, limiting. He could sense his own considerable power being gently but firmly contained, like a river channeled into safe banks. The message was clear: guests were welcome, but their magic was controlled. Apollon led them through gardens where flowers bloomed that shouldn't have been possible at that altitude and that season. Veela of all ages watched their progress with undisguised interest, some with open hostility when they recognized Dumbledore. "Word travels quickly," Dumbledore observed. "We have no secrets about Harry's treatment among our people," Apollon replied without looking back. "Every Veela in the Enclave knows what you permitted to happen to a child in your care." Dumbledore accepted the rebuke silently. Their path took them to the central palace, where they were guided through high-ceilinged corridors to an impressive circular chamber. At its center sat a round table of polished white stone, around which several seats were arranged. Queen Celeste rose from the most ornate of these as they entered. Though she appeared no older than Apollon, her bearing carried the weight of centuries. "Welcome to the Veela Enclave," she greeted them, her musical voice somehow both warm and distant. "Please, be seated. We have much to discuss." As they took their places, Dumbledore noted the empty seats to the Queen's right. Before he could inquire, the chamber doors opened again, and Harry Potter entered, his hand firmly clasped in that of young Fleur Delacour. Dumbledore's breath caught. The boy looked remarkably different from the thin, nervous child he'd glimpsed occasionally through Arabella Figg's reports. Though still small for his age, Harry stood straighter, his green eyes clear and alert behind new glasses. The lightning bolt scar remained vivid against his forehead, but there was a healthy color to his cheeks that had been absent before. Most striking, however, was the way he carried himself, not with the hesitant posture of a child expecting punishment, but with the careful dignity of someone who had begun to discover his own worth. "Harry," Dumbledore said softly, unable to keep a note of wonder from his voice. The boy's eyes met his, and Dumbledore found himself being evaluated with a directness that was disconcerting from a 5-year-old. "Professor Dumbledore," Harry replied evenly. "You look well, my boy," Dumbledore offered. "I am well," Harry said simply. "Better than I've ever been." Queen Celeste gestured to the empty seats beside her. "Harry, Fleur, join us." As the children took their places, Fudge cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Is it appropriate for the children to be present for these discussions?" "As these discussions concern Harry's future directly, yes," the Queen replied. "And where Harry goes, Fleur goes." Their bond, while not yet fully matured, is already too strong to separate them unnecessarily. About this bond, Amelia Bones began. I understand it's quite unprecedented at their ages. Rare, but not without precedent, Queen Celeste corrected. Our histories record similar early recognitions in times of great magical significance. Her gaze shifted meaningfully to Harry's scar. Which brings us to one of our central concerns. Dumbledore leaned forward slightly. You refer to what you found in Harry's scar. Indeed. The Queen's eyes were cold as winter stars. A fragment of Tom Riddle's soul, embedded in an innocent child. A Horcrux, created unintentionally when his killing curse rebounded. You knew this, or at least suspected it, did you not? Fudge's face drained of color. A Horcrux? Impossible. You know who couldn't have, he could and he did, Dumbledore interrupted quietly. And yes, Queen Celeste, I had my suspicions. Though I had no way to confirm them without risking harm to Harry. Yet you placed him with muggles who harmed him in other ways, Apollon said sharply. Physical neglect. Emotional abuse. A cupboard, Dumbledore. A cupboard for a bed. Fudge and Bones both looked stricken, though for different reasons. Bones' face reflected genuine horror, while Fudge seemed more concerned with the political implications. I made a grave miscalculation, Dumbledore admitted. I believed the blood protection through Lily Potter's sacrifice was paramount. I thought Petunia Dursley, whatever her feelings about magic, would not mistreat her sister's child. He looked directly at Harry. I was wrong, Harry, and for that, I am deeply sorry. Harry studied the old wizard, surprised by the apology. He had expected denials, justifications, attempts to reclaim authority. Instead, Dumbledore seemed genuinely regretful. Why didn't you ever check on me? Harry asked, the question that had been burning inside him since learning who Dumbledore was. A shadow passed over Dumbledore's face. I had Arabella Figg living nearby, reporting periodically. But I see now that her reports were insufficient, and I should have visited personally. He sighed heavily. I was so focused on the external threats to your safety that I failed to consider the damage being done from within. Harry felt Fleur's hand squeeze his under the table. The Veela are going to remove it, he said. The Horcrux thing. They can take it out without hurting me. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. Is this true? He asked the Queen. It is, she confirmed. Veela magic offers solutions your wizarding methods do not. The first purification ritual is scheduled for tomorrow. I would be most interested to observe, Dumbledore began, but Apollon cut him off. That will not be possible, she said flatly. The ritual requires absolute trust among participants. Your presence would be counterproductive. Dumbledore inclined his head in acceptance. I understand. But perhaps afterward, we might discuss the method. If Voldemort created other Horcruxes, did he? Queen Celeste asked sharply. A weighted silence fell over the table. Finally, Dumbledore nodded slowly. I believe so, yes. The evidence suggests he may have created several, though I am still working to confirm this theory. Fudge made a strangled noise. Several. Dumbledore, what are you saying? I am saying, Cornelius, that Voldemort took extraordinary measures to ensure his immortality, Dumbledore replied gravely. And that he is not truly gone, merely disembodied and weakened. Preposterous, Fudge sputtered. This is fear-mongering of the worst, Minister, Amelia Bones interrupted firmly. If there is even a possibility that you know who could return, we must take it seriously. She turned to the Veela Queen. Your Majesty, if your methods can safely remove a Horcrux from a living host, this knowledge could be invaluable. Queen Celeste considered this. Perhaps. But our primary concern is Harry's well-being, not hunting Horcruxes. Which brings us to the purpose of our visit, Fudge said, seizing the opportunity to return to safer ground. The British Ministry recognizes your concern for Harry Potter's welfare. But he is a British citizen and a figure of significant importance to our nation. Surely some arrangement can be made. What arrangement did you have in mind? Apollon asked coldly. Fudge glanced at Dumbledore, clearly hoping for support. Well, once the, Horcrux issue is resolved, perhaps Harry could return to Britain. Not to his relatives, of course, he added hastily, seeing the darkening expressions around the table. But to a suitable magical guardian. His godfather, Sirius Black, is undergoing review of his case as we speak. His case should never have needed review, Queen Celeste observed. He should have received a trial in the first place. Fudge shifted uncomfortably. Yes, well, those were difficult times. Mistakes were made. Many mistakes, the Queen agreed pointedly. And we are not inclined to allow Harry to bear the consequences of further ones. Harry, who had been listening intently, spoke up. What about Sirius Black? Was he really my parents' friend? He was your father's best friend, Dumbledore confirmed. And your godfather, named so in your parents' will. He was believed to have betrayed their location to Voldemort, but new evidence suggests another man, Peter Pettigrew, may have been responsible. And no one bothered to verify this before sending him to Azkaban? Apollon asked incredulously. Amelia Bones looked grim. That is precisely what we are investigating now. Mr. Black has been moved to a secure ministry holding cell and has already undergone preliminary questioning under Veritasrum. His account matches the evidence in the Potter's will. Harry's mind whirled with this new information. A godfather, someone his parents had chosen to look after him if they couldn't. Someone who might have raised him with love instead of resentment if he hadn't been wrongfully imprisoned. I want to meet him, Harry said decisively. If he's innocent, I want to meet him. The adults exchanged glances, some surprised by the conviction in the 5-year-old's voice. That could be arranged, Amelia Bones said carefully. If Mr. Black is cleared of all charges, which seems increasingly likely. Which still leaves the question of Harry's custody, Fudge pressed. Queen Celeste's expression was implacable. Harry will remain under the protection of the Veela Nation until the Horcrux is removed and his bond with Fleur stabilizes. This is non-negotiable. Afterward, we are open to discussing visitation arrangements with his godfather and educational options for when he reaches school age. But surely, Fudge began. Minister, Dumbledore interrupted gently. I believe the Queen's position is quite reasonable, given the circumstances. He turned to Harry. Harry, are you happy here? The simple, direct question caught Harry off guard. He looked around at the Veela who had taken him in, at Fleur who had recognized him, at the Queen who had protected him. Yes, he said. I'm very happy here. Dumbledore studied him for a long moment, then nodded as though coming to a decision. Then I see no reason to pursue this matter further at present. Harry's well-being must be our primary concern. Fudge stared at him in astonishment. Dumbledore. The boy who lived cannot simply be raised by beings who care for him and can heal him. Dumbledore suggested mildly. I believe my position on this matter is clear, Cornelius. I was wrong to place Harry with the Dursleys. I will not compound that error by removing him from a situation where he is finally thriving. Harry couldn't hide his surprise. He had expected Dumbledore to fight harder, to insist on regaining control. As if reading his thoughts, Dumbledore smiled gently. My dear boy, I have only ever wanted what was best for you. I believed, mistakenly, that the blood wards were worth the hardship you endured. I see now that I was wrong, and I am not so prideful that I cannot admit when others have found a better solution than my own. Fleur looked skeptical, but Harry found himself wanting to believe the old wizard. What about the war? He asked. The one the Veela declared on you? Ah, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled slightly. I believe that is for Queen Celeste to address. The Veela Queen regarded Dumbledore thoughtfully. The declaration of war was made in response to specific conditions, Harry's mistreatment under your guardianship and our belief that you would attempt to reclaim him against his will. If you truly accept our custodianship of Harry and support our efforts to heal him, perhaps the declaration can be amended." "To what?" Apollon asked, clearly surprised by her mother's willingness to negotiate. "A formal censure, rather than a state of war," Queen Celeste suggested. "With conditions for continued peace, including regular updates on Harry's well-being, consultation regarding his magical education, and cooperation in addressing the greater threat posed by Voldemort's Horcruxes." Dumbledore inclined his head. "I find these terms acceptable. And might I suggest an addition? If Harry wishes to meet with his godfather, once Sirius is cleared, I would be pleased to facilitate such a meeting at a location of your choosing." The Queen nodded. "Agreed." Fudge looked from one to the other in bewilderment, clearly struggling to process how quickly the situation had shifted from international magical incident to cordial negotiation. "Well," he said finally. "I suppose if everyone is in agreement." "Not quite everyone," Amelia Bones interjected. "Harry, what do you think of these arrangements? You've been rather quiet." All eyes turned to Harry, who wasn't used to having his opinion sought on important matters. He considered carefully before speaking. "I want to stay here," he said finally. "But I'd like to meet my godfather. And—" he hesitated, looking at Dumbledore. "I want to know more about my parents. And why Voldemort came after them. And me." Dumbledore's face grew solemn. "Those are fair requests, Harry. And you deserve answers, though some may need to wait until you're a bit older." "Because of the prophecy?" Harry asked innocently. The chamber went utterly silent. Dumbledore's composure slipped for the first time, genuine shock crossing his features. "How do you know about that?" he asked quietly. Harry touched his scar. "Sometimes I hear things. In my dreams. Since I came here, they've gotten clearer. I heard him, Voldemort, talking about a prophecy. About why he had to kill me." Fleur's hand tightened around his. "You didn't tell me," she whispered. "I only remembered this morning," Harry admitted. "After you mentioned the purification ritual." Queen Celeste and Apollon exchanged concerned glances. "This confirms our suspicions," the Queen said. "The soul fragment is active, not dormant. The purification cannot wait." "No, it cannot," Dumbledore agreed gravely. "And Harry, yes, there is a prophecy. One that I will explain when you're old enough to understand its implications fully. But for now, the most important thing is to remove Voldemort's influence from your mind." Harry nodded, relieved that no one was dismissing what he'd heard as imagination or childish fancy. "Then we are agreed," Queen Celeste said, rising to her feet. "Harry remains under Veela protection while we address the Horcrux. The state of war is reduced to a formal censure with conditions. And we will cooperate on matters pertaining to Voldemort's potential return." As the others stood, signaling the end of the meeting, Dumbledore approached Harry directly. "May I have a moment with you, Harry? Just a brief one." Fleur looked ready to object, but Harry squeezed her hand reassuringly. "It's okay," he said. Then to Dumbledore, "Just a moment." The others moved toward the chamber exit, giving them space but remaining within sight. Dumbledore knelt to bring himself closer to Harry's level, a gesture of respect the boy appreciated. "Harry," Dumbledore said softly, "there is something I wish to give you." From within his robes, he withdrew a small package wrapped in velvet. "This belonged to your father. He left it in my keeping shortly before he died. I believe he would want you to have it now." Harry accepted the package with trembling hands. "What is it?" "An invisibility cloak," Dumbledore told him. "A very special one that has been in the Potter family for generations. Your father used it for various adventures during his time at Hogwarts." Harry's throat felt tight with emotion. "Thank you," he whispered. "There is one more thing," Dumbledore continued. "When the time comes for you to attend Hogwarts, if that is what you choose, know that you will always have a place there. Whatever happens between now and then, Hogwarts was your parents' home, and it can be yours too. Harry nodded, unable to speak. Dumbledore smiled gently and rose to his feet. Until we meet again, Harry Potter. As the British delegation departed, Harry remained in the council chamber, the velvet package clutched to his chest. Fleur returned to his side, her expression curious. "What did he give you?" she asked. Harry carefully unwrapped the package, revealing a fluid, silvery cloth that seemed to flow like water between his fingers. "Something that belonged to my dad," he said softly. "A part of my family." Fleur slipped her arm around his shoulders, and together they watched the shimmering fabric catch the light, like memories made tangible. Sirius Black stood in the center of the Wizengamot chamber, his once handsome face gaunt but defiant, his posture straight despite years of imprisonment. The chains on the chair behind him hung loose, a concession to the mounting evidence of his innocence. The Wizengamot calls Sirius Orion Black to provide testimony under Veritaserum in the matter of the deaths of James and Lily Potter, the alleged murder of Peter Pettigrew, and the deaths of 12 Muggles on November 1, 1981, Amelia Bones announced formally. Sirius's eyes swept the packed chamber, noting familiar faces among the Wizengamot members, some hostile, some confused, some cautiously sympathetic. Albus Dumbledore sat in the Chief Warlock's chair, his expression inscrutable. "I am prepared to take Veritaserum and answer any questions," Sirius said, his voice rough but steady. "I have nothing to hide and never did." A Ministry Potions master approached with the clear vial of truth serum. 3 drops were carefully administered to Sirius's tongue, and the chamber waited as his eyes glazed over slightly, indicating the potion had taken effect. "State your name for the record," Amelia began. "Sirius Orion Black. Were you the secret keeper for James and Lily Potter when they went into hiding under the Fidelius charm?" "No," Sirius replied tonelessly. "I was originally meant to be, but I suggested they change to Peter Pettigrew at the last minute. I thought I was too obvious a choice. Everyone knew James and I were like brothers." A murmur ran through the chamber. Amelia continued, "Did you betray James and Lily Potter's location to Lord Voldemort?" Many members flinched at the name, but Sirius showed no reaction beyond answering, "No. I would have died before betraying them." "Did you kill Peter Pettigrew and 12 Muggles on November 1, 1981? "No. I confronted Peter after discovering James and Lily were dead. He shouted for the whole street to hear that I had betrayed them, then used his wand behind his back to cause an explosion. In the confusion, he cut off his own finger, transformed into his animagus form, a rat, and escaped into the sewers. This caused a greater stir in the chamber." "Pettigrew was an unregistered animagus?" Amelia clarified. "Yes. He, James, and I all became animagi during our 5th year at Hogwarts to accompany Remus Lupin during his werewolf transformations." Dumbledore's eyebrows rose at this revelation, though he didn't seem entirely surprised. "Why did you laugh when Aurors arrived at the scene?" A flicker of pain crossed Sirius's face despite the Veritaserum's numbing effect. "It was hysteria. Everything I cared about had been destroyed in 24 hours. My best friends were dead. Another friend had betrayed us all. And the perfect trap had been sprung. Peter framed me so completely that even I could see the terrible irony. My idea to switch secret keepers had killed James and Lily. I laughed because if I didn't, I would have gone mad with grief on the spot." The chamber was silent now, the raw honesty of his answer leaving many uncomfortable. "One final question," Amelia said quietly. "If released, what are your intentions regarding Harry Potter, your godson?" "To protect him," Sirius answered immediately. "To give him the home and family James and Lily wanted him to have. To make sure he knows how much his parents loved him." Amelia nodded to a healer, who administered the antidote to the Veritaserum. As Sirius's eyes cleared, the chamber erupted in conversation. Dumbledore stood, raising his hands for silence. Members of the Wizengamot, we have heard testimony under veritaserum that aligns with new evidence from the Potter's will. It appears a grave miscarriage of justice has occurred. Here, called Augusta Longbottom. I move that all charges against Sirius Black be dropped immediately, Amelia Bones proposed. Furthermore, that he be granted full compensation for wrongful imprisonment, that his record be expunged, and that all his rights and properties be restored. Seconded, came several voices at once. Those in favor? Dumbledore called. The majority of the Wisengamot raised their wands, tips glowing with affirmative light. Those against? A much smaller number of wands rose, notably including Lucius Malfoy's. The motion carries, Dumbledore announced. Sirius Black, you are hereby declared innocent of all charges and a free man once more. The Ministry offers its profound apologies for this miscarriage of justice. Sirius swayed slightly, the reality of his freedom finally hitting him. Thank you, he managed. Then, more urgently, Harry. I need to see Harry. Dumbledore stepped down from the Chief Warlock's podium and approached Sirius directly. Mr. Black, there are developments regarding Harry that you should be aware of before any meeting is arranged. Sirius's eyes narrowed. What developments? Is he all right? He is well, better than he has been in some time, Dumbledore assured him. But his living situation has changed significantly. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Amelia Bones joined them. Mr. Black will need time to recover his strength before any international travel. International? Sirius interrupted sharply. Where exactly is my godson, Dumbledore? Dumbledore sighed. That is a rather complex story, Sirius. One best told sitting down, with perhaps a good meal and some proper clothes for you. Though clearly frustrated by the delay, Sirius recognized the wisdom in this approach. His legs were already trembling from the effort of standing through the trial, and his prison-issued robes hung from his emaciated frame. Fine, he conceded. But I want the whole truth, Dumbledore. No half-answers, no manipulations, no, for the greater good, nonsense. Harry is my godson, and I have years to make up for. You have my word, Dumbledore agreed solemnly. Though I suspect you may find the truth stranger than anything you might have imagined. Harry stood in the center of a circular chamber deep within the Veela enclave, barefoot on cool stone, wearing only a simple white tunic that reached his knees. Around him, 7 Veela healers including Emmeline formed a perfect circle, each holding a silver bowl filled with a luminous blue liquid. Remember what we practiced, Emmeline instructed calmly. Focus on your breathing. When the chant begins, picture the foreign presence in your scar as a dark smoke, and imagine it being drawn out through the top of your head. Harry nodded, trying to quell his nervousness. He had been preparing for this first purification ritual for days, learning meditation techniques and practicing visualization exercises. But now that the moment had arrived, fear flickered at the edges of his mind. What if it hurt? What if it changed him? What if some essential part of himself was tangled up with the soul fragment and got removed along with it? As if sensing his thoughts, Fleur squeezed his hand. Though not part of the ritual itself, she had been allowed to accompany him for emotional support and would watch from just outside the circle. You'll be fine, she whispered. I'll be right here. Harry took strength from her confidence and nodded. Fleur released his hand and stepped back to her designated position. We begin, Emmeline announced. The healers started to sing, a wordless melody that resonated with the chamber's perfect acoustics, creating harmonics that Harry could feel in his bones. The blue liquid in the silver bowls began to glow more brightly, sending tendrils of light upward like luminous smoke. Harry closed his eyes and focused on his breathing as instructed. In and out. Slow and steady. The singing wrapped around him like a blanket, warm and protective. At first, nothing seemed to happen beyond a pleasant tingling sensation. Then, gradually, he became aware of something stirring within his scar, a cold, angry presence that had always been there but that he'd never fully recognized until now. It didn't want to leave. Harry's breathing quickened as he felt resistance, a clinging sensation like fingers gripping his mind. The singing intensified, and the blue light grew stronger, visible even through his closed eyelids. "Focus, Harry," Emmeline's voice penetrated his growing panic. "You are stronger than the fragment. It has no real hold on you. Imagine it rising up and out." Harry tried to picture the dark smoke lifting from his scar, but the resistance increased. His head began to pound with a pain unlike any he'd experienced before, sharp and burning. "It's fighting," he gasped. "Of course it is," Emmeline replied calmly. "It doesn't want to be separated from your life force. But this is only the first purification. We are not removing it entirely today, just weakening its hold." Harry clung to those words, reminding himself that this was just the first step. He didn't need to force everything out at once. Just weaken it. Just begin the process. With renewed determination, he focused on his breathing again and changed his visualization. Instead of trying to force the fragment out, he imagined his own magic, bright, warm, and alive, expanding within him, pushing the cold darkness away from his core and toward the surface. The change in approach seemed to work. The resistance lessened, and Harry felt a curious sensation, like ice melting and dripping upward against gravity. His scar grew hot, then abruptly cold, and he felt something being drawn out, not everything, but a portion, like skimming poison from the surface of a potion. The Veela's singing reached a crescendo, and the blue light from the bowls converged above Harry's head, forming a shimmering vortex. Into this vortex flowed wisps of black smoke emanating from his scar, small but dense with malevolence. As each wisp entered the blue vortex, it sizzled and dissolved, consumed by the Veela magic. The process wasn't exactly painful, but it created a strange tugging sensation that made Harry's eyes water. Finally, after what felt like hours but was likely only minutes, the flow of black smoke ceased. The vortex of blue light spiraled inward, condensing until it formed a small, glowing orb that Emmeline captured in her silver bowl. "Enough for today," she announced, and the other healers lowered their bowls in unison. Harry swayed slightly as the singing stopped, suddenly aware of how exhausted he felt. Before he could fall, Fleur was at his side, supporting him. "You did it," she exclaimed. "Part of it is gone." Harry touched his scar gingerly. It felt different, cooler, less present somehow. And in his mind, where the angry, cold presence had lurked, there was now a sense of space, as though a room had been partially cleared of clutter. "How do you feel?" Emmeline asked, approaching with a goblet of something steaming and sweet-smelling. "Tired," Harry admitted, accepting the drink. "But, lighter. Like I had a headache I didn't know about until it started going away." Emmeline smiled. "That's a good sign. The fragment had integrated itself deeply, feeding on your magic and influencing your thoughts in subtle ways. As we remove it, you'll become more fully yourself." Harry sipped the potion, which tasted of honey and herbs and sent warming energy through his limbs. "How many more rituals will it take?" 3 or 4, most likely, Emmeline replied. "Each separated by at least a month to allow your magic to stabilize between sessions. The fragment has been with you for nearly 4 years, removing it too quickly could cause shock to your magical core." Harry nodded, then looked curiously at the glowing orb in Emmeline's bowl. "What happens to that part?" "We destroy it," she said simply. Veela fire is one of the few substances that can destroy a soul fragment without harming its vessel. For ordinary Horcruxes, those contained in objects, wizards must use methods that destroy the container, like basilisk venom or fiend fire. But for a living host. She shook her head. "Your wizarding kind has no safe method." The implications of this settled heavily on Harry. If the Veela hadn't claimed him, if he'd remained under Dumbledore's guardianship, what would have happened when the time came to remove the Horcrux? As if reading his thoughts, Fleur's arm tightened around him. "You're safe now," she said firmly. "No one will sacrifice you for anything." Harry leaned against her, suddenly too exhausted to stand independently. I think I need to lie down. Of course, Emmeline said. Rest is essential after such a ritual. Your magic needs time to adjust to the change. As Fleur and one of the healers helped Harry back to his chambers, he found himself thinking about Dumbledore's visit the previous day. The old wizard had seemed genuinely remorseful, had even returned his father's invisibility cloak. Yet Harry couldn't shake the feeling that there was more, much more, that Dumbledore wasn't telling him about his connection to Voldemort. But that was a concern for another day. Right now, all Harry wanted was sleep, and the comforting knowledge that the darkness inside him had begun to recede, one small piece at a time. Sirius Black stood before the mirror in his newly reclaimed bedroom at number 12, Grimmauld Place, barely recognizing the man staring back at him. 2 weeks of freedom, proper nutrition, and healing potions had begun to restore him physically, but his eyes still held the haunted look of Azkaban. You look a damn sight better than you did, Remus Lupin observed from the doorway. Sirius turned to his old friend with a wry smile. That's not saying much, Moony. Remus stepped into the room, looking nearly as worn as Sirius despite never having been to Azkaban. The years had not been kind to the werewolf, poverty and prejudice had left their marks in premature lines on his face and grey streaks in his hair. The international port key is ready, Remus said. Dumbledore just arrived with it. Sirius nodded, straightening the sleeves of his new robes. After weeks of negotiations, arrangements had finally been made for him to visit Harry at the Veela Enclave. The anticipation and anxiety had nearly driven him mad, a different kind of prison than Azkaban, but almost as torturous. Do I look presentable? Sirius asked. I don't want to frighten him. Remus's expression softened. You look fine, Padfoot. And Harry's not going to care what you look like. From Dumbledore's reports, he's quite eager to meet you. His godfather, who he's never met and who's been in prison his entire life, Sirius said bitterly. Some first impression. He knows you're innocent, Remus reminded him. And that you were his father's best friend. Give him some credit, by all accounts, he's a remarkably understanding child. Sirius took a deep breath. Right. No pressure. Just meeting my godson for the first time while surrounded by Veela who've declared war on the most powerful wizard in Britain and who apparently can remove pieces of Voldemort's soul. Perfectly normal day. Remus chuckled. When you put it that way. They made their way downstairs to the drawing room, where Albus Dumbledore waited with a small silver figurine of a bird in flight, the portkey. Ah, Sirius, excellent timing, Dumbledore greeted him. We're expected in 10 minutes. You're sure they're all right with both of us coming? Remus asked, gesturing between himself and Sirius. Queen Celeste specifically extended the invitation to include you, Remus, Dumbledore assured him. I believe she feels Harry should have connections to both his parents, not just James through Sirius. Sirius straightened his robes one last time, trying to quell the butterflies in his stomach. Let's do this before I lose my nerve. Dumbledore held out the portkey. On 3, then. 1, 2, 3. They each touched the silver bird, and Sirius felt the familiar hook behind his navel as the portkey activated. The world dissolved into a swirl of color and sound before reforming into a sunlit courtyard surrounded by white marble buildings. Fleur Delacour stood waiting for them, elegant in flowing silver robes. Welcome to the Veela Enclave, she greeted them formally. Harry is waiting in the gardens. As she led them through the enclave, Sirius tried to take in his surroundings, but his mind was too focused on the imminent meeting to fully appreciate the extraordinary magic around him. Remus, however, was openly fascinated, his scholarly nature momentarily overcoming his usual reserve. The harmonization of elemental magic with architectural design is remarkable, he murmured. I've read accounts, but they hardly do it justice. Apollon glanced back at him with slightly more warmth than she'd shown Dumbledore. The Enclave has existed for over 3,000 years, though most of what you see was built during the Renaissance, when we formed our current alliance with the French magical community. They rounded a corner, and a breathtaking garden came into view, a riot of flowers that shouldn't have been blooming together, trees bearing both fruits and blossoms simultaneously, and at the center, a small pond where two children sat with their backs to the newcomers. Sirius stopped dead in his tracks, his heart hammering in his chest. Even from behind, the boy was unmistakable, James's unruly black hair, Lily's slight build. Beside him sat a girl with silvery blonde hair, their heads bent together over something that appeared to be floating above the pond's surface. Apollon cleared her throat softly. "Harry, your guests have arrived." The children turned, and Sirius felt his breath catch. Harry's eyes, Lily's eyes, vivid green and almond-shaped, fixed on him with an intensity that belied the boy's 5 years. For a moment, neither spoke, each taking the measure of the other across the expanse of garden. Then Harry stood, the floating object, what appeared to be a small ball of light, forgotten as he took a tentative step forward. "You're Sirius?" "My godfather?" Sirius found he couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. He managed a nod. "You look like your photographs," Harry continued, moving closer. "From my parents' wedding. The ones Mr. Dumbledore brought me." Sirius finally found his voice. "You look like them," he said hoarsely. "Your father's hair. Your mother's eyes." Harry stopped a few feet away, suddenly shy. The blonde girl, Fleur, Sirius presumed, had followed and now stood protectively at Harry's side, her young face solemn as she assessed the newcomers. Sirius knelt, bringing himself to Harry's eye level. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you," he said, the words he'd rehearsed 1,000 times in his cell finally finding voice. "I made a terrible mistake going after Pettigrew instead of staying to take care of you. If I could change one thing about that night, it would be that." Harry studied him thoughtfully. "It wasn't your fault," he said with a directness that reminded Sirius painfully of Lily. "You didn't know Pettigrew would do that." "Still," Sirius insisted, "I was your godfather. I should have put you first." Harry took another step forward. "You're here now." Those 3 simple words broke something open in Sirius's chest. Without thinking, he opened his arms in invitation, leaving the choice to Harry. For a heartbeat, the boy hesitated. Then, with a decisiveness that belied his age, Harry stepped into the embrace, his small arms wrapping around Sirius's neck. Sirius closed his eyes, holding his godson for the first time since he was a baby, memorizing the feeling as though it might be snatched away at any moment. "Hello, Harry," he whispered. "I've missed you so much." When they finally separated, both had tears in their eyes. Sirius wiped his away quickly, embarrassed, but Harry made no move to hide his. "This is Fleur," Harry said, reaching back to take the girl's hand. "She's she's mine. And I'm hers." Fleur lifted her chin slightly, a gesture of pride rather than defiance. "I recognized him as my mate," she explained in accented English. "That's why we brought him here, away from those terrible muggles." Sirius blinked, still trying to wrap his head around the concept of mate bonds at such a young age. "Well, I'm very grateful to you and your family, Miss Delacour. You've done what I should have been able to do." This seemed to satisfy Fleur, who relaxed slightly. "You may call me Fleur, as you are Harry's family. And this," Sirius continued, gesturing to Remus, who had remained a respectful distance behind, "is Remus Lupin. He was also a close friend of your parents." Harry's gaze shifted to Remus, curious rather than wary. "You were in the photographs too. Dad called you Moony." Remus stepped forward, his usual reserve melting at Harry's words. "That's right. It was a nickname from our school days." "Because you're a werewolf?" Harry asked innocently. Remus froze, shock evident on his face. "How did you?" "The Veela can sense it," Harry explained. "They said you have 2 natures bound together. Is that why you look sad?" The simple question, delivered without fear or judgment, seemed to catch Remus completely off guard. Well, it's part of it," he admitted. Being a werewolf makes life difficult in Wizarding Britain. Not here, Fleur interjected. The Veela don't fear werewolves. We understand having another nature. Sirius watched as Remus processed this, seeing the faintest flicker of hope cross his friend's face. If the Veela truly didn't discriminate against werewolves. Perhaps, Apollon suggested, we might continue this conversation over lunch. The Queen wishes to join you, and Harry has been quite eager to hear stories about his parents. As they followed Apollon toward a pavilion where a table had been set, Harry fell into step beside Sirius, slipping his small hand into his godfather's larger one with a naturalness that made Sirius's heart constrict. Will you tell me about when they were young? Harry asked. Before Voldemort? Everything I can remember, Sirius promised. And Remus remembers even more, he was always the observant one. And? Harry hesitated. Will you tell me why he came after them? After me? Professor Dumbledore said there was a prophecy, but he wouldn't explain it yet. Sirius exchanged a glance with Remus and Dumbledore, who had been walking behind them. I don't know all the details myself, he admitted. But whatever I do know, I'll tell you. No more secrets, Harry. You've had enough of those to last a lifetime. Harry nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. As they reached the pavilion, he tugged on Sirius's hand to stop him for a moment. Are you going to try to take me away from here? He asked quietly. Sirius knelt again, meeting Harry's eyes. Is that what you're worried about? Harry nodded. I like it here. And Fleur needs me close until the bond settles. And they're helping with the thing in my scar. I won't take you anywhere you don't want to go, Sirius assured him. I've just gotten my freedom back, Harry. The last thing I want to do is make you feel trapped or unhappy. If being here is what's best for you, then that's what I want too. Relief washed over Harry's face. But you'll visit? And maybe I could visit you sometimes? As often as they'll let me, Sirius promised. And yes, you're always welcome wherever I am. That's what being a godfather means, you have a home with me whenever you want it. Harry smiled then, a smile so like James's that it made Sirius's chest ache. I'd like that. I've never had two homes before. I've never even had one, really. The simple statement, delivered without self-pity but as a mere fact, hardened Sirius's resolve. Whatever happened next, with Dumbledore, with the Veela, with the fragments of Voldemort's soul, he would be there for Harry this time. No more mistakes, no more putting vengeance before his godson's needs. This time, he would get it right. The summer passed in a blur of new experiences for Harry. Each day in the Veela enclave brought fresh wonders, learning to swim in the enchanted pools, discovering the basics of magical theory from tutors who never made him feel stupid for asking questions, exploring the vast libraries filled with books in languages he somehow found himself able to understand after a few weeks of exposure. But the greatest change was in Harry himself. With the first purification ritual behind him and the second scheduled for the following month, he felt clearer, more focused. The nightmares that had plagued him at the Dursleys, vague dreams of green light and high-pitched laughter, had all but vanished, replaced by normal childish dreams and the occasional shared dream with Fleur, a side effect of their developing bond. His magic, too, was changing. Without the Horcrux's suppressive influence, Harry's natural abilities were beginning to emerge. At first it was small things, making a feather float when he concentrated, warming his hands on cold mornings without thinking about it. But as the weeks passed, his control grew along with his strength. You're a natural, Apollon told him after observing one of his tutoring sessions. Your magic responds to your intent without the rigid framework most wizard children require. Is that because of the bond with Fleur? Harry asked, watching as the small flame he'd conjured danced above his palm. Partly, Apollon admitted. The bond allows your magic to harmonize with Veela magic, which is more intuitive than wizarding magic. But much of it is simply you, Harry. You have remarkable potential. Today, Harry sat cross-legged in a quiet corner of the gardens, practicing the meditation techniques Emmeline had taught him. Controlling his magic required mental discipline, especially with the Horcrux still partially present. Nearby, Fleur was engaged in her own practice, creating and manipulating small balls of Veela fire, a skill that, at her age, demonstrated her exceptional heritage. They were interrupted by the arrival of a Veela messenger, who bowed respectfully. "Harry Potter, the Queen requests your presence in the council chamber. Your godfather has arrived with news." Harry jumped to his feet, excitement bubbling through him. Sirius had been visiting regularly throughout the summer, sometimes with Remus, sometimes alone. Each visit brought stories of his parents, wizarding customs he would have learned had he been raised in the magical world, and increasingly, updates on the political situation in Britain. "Is something wrong?" Fleur asked, extinguishing her fire with a wave of her hand. The messenger's expression revealed nothing. "I was only asked to fetch Harry. But you may accompany him, of course." Exchanging curious glances, Harry and Fleur followed the messenger through the enclave to the council chamber, where they found not just Queen Celeste and Sirius, but also Dumbledore, Amelia Bones, and a thin, stern-looking witch Harry didn't recognize. "Harry," Queen Celeste greeted him. "Thank you for joining us. This is Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress of Hogwarts School." Harry bowed slightly, as he'd been taught was proper when meeting someone of status. "Hello, Professor." McGonagall's severe expression softened slightly. "Mr. Potter. You look well. Better than when I saw him at those horrible muggles, that's for certain," she added in an undertone to Sirius, who nodded grimly. "What's happening?" Harry asked, looking between the adults. "Is something wrong?" "Not wrong," Sirius said, though his expression was serious. "But important. We've discovered something about Voldemort, something that affects you." Harry glanced at Fleur, who moved closer to him instinctively. "What is it?" Dumbledore stepped forward. "We have confirmed that Voldemort created multiple Horcruxes, Harry. The fragment in your scar was not his only safeguard against death." "How many?" Queen Celeste asked sharply. "We believe 7 in total," Dumbledore replied. "Including the one that was unintentionally created in Harry." The implications settled heavily over the chamber. 7 pieces of soul, scattered who knew where. "We've identified 2 others," Amelia Bones added. "A diary, which was in the possession of Lucius Malfoy until our recent raid on his manor, and a ring, which Professor Dumbledore located at the former home of Voldemort's maternal family." "Have they been destroyed?" Apollon asked. "The ring, yes," Dumbledore said, displaying a blackened, injured-looking hand that Harry hadn't noticed before. "Though not without cost. The diary is currently contained in the Department of Mysteries while we determine the safest method of destruction." "Veela fire would destroy it without risk," Queen Celeste pointed out. "Which is partly why we've come," Dumbledore acknowledged. "We would like to request the assistance of the Veela Nation in destroying the Horcruxes as we find them." Harry listened to this exchange with growing confusion and concern. "But what does this have to do with me specifically?" he asked. "Besides the one in my scar, I mean." The adults exchanged glances, and Sirius moved to Harry's side, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Harry, the prophecy that Voldemort heard, the one that led him to attack your parents, it connects you to him, to his defeat." "You're saying I have to fight him," Harry said flatly. "That's what the prophecy means, isn't it?" Dumbledore looked surprised at Harry's directness. "In essence, yes. Though, fight may be too simplistic a term. The prophecy suggests that you have power that Voldemort knows not, and that neither can live while the other survives." "What power?" Fleur demanded, her protective instincts flaring. "He's just a child." "That remains to be seen," Dumbledore said gently. "Love, perhaps. Or something connected to your bond with him, Miss Delacour. The future is not set in stone." Harry absorbed this, his mind working rapidly. So even after the Horcrux is gone from me, I'm still connected to him. I still have to face him someday. I'm afraid so, Dumbledore confirmed. But not alone, Harry. Never alone. And not unprepared, Sirius added fiercely. That's the other reason we're here. We need to discuss your education. Harry blinked. My education? Professor McGonagall spoke up. Traditionally, you would attend Hogwarts beginning at age 11. However, given your unique circumstances, we believe a more specialized approach may be warranted. We're proposing a compromise, Sirius explained. You would remain primarily here, with the Veela, continuing your Horcrux purification and developing your bond with Fleur. But you would also receive training from various experts, myself, Remus, Professor McGonagall, and others, in skills you'll need to eventually face Voldemort. And when I'm 11? Harry asked. You and Fleur would attend Hogwarts together, Dumbledore said. By then, her Veela magic will be developed enough that separation would be less problematic for your bond. And Hogwarts has resources that even the Veela Enclave cannot provide. Harry looked to Queen Celeste. What do you think? The Veela Queen studied him thoughtfully. I think, young Harry, that your destiny was set in motion long before you came to us. We can protect you, heal you, give you the childhood you deserve. But we cannot shield you from your fate indefinitely. She turned to Dumbledore. However, if this training is to occur, it will be on our terms. No one works with Harry without our approval. No one pushes him beyond what is appropriate for his age and development. And Fleur will be included in any training that might affect their bond. Those terms are acceptable, Dumbledore agreed readily. Harry felt overwhelmed by the weight of expectation suddenly placed upon him. A prophecy. A destiny. A dark wizard who would return to finish what he'd started. As if sensing his distress, Fleur slipped her hand into his. We have time, she whispered. Years before you face him. Years to prepare. Harry squeezed her hand gratefully. Will you help me? He asked, looking around at the adults who had, in their different ways, become his protectors. All of you. Until my last breath, Sirius vowed. Always, Apollon and Queen Celeste said in unison. McGonagall nodded firmly. You are James and Lily's son. We will not fail them again. Dumbledore's blue eyes met Harry's green ones. I once made decisions for you, Harry, believing I knew best. I was wrong. This time, we walk the path together, with you at the center of your own destiny. Harry straightened, drawing strength from their commitment and from Fleur's steady presence at his side. He was only 5, almost 6 now, and the task before him seemed impossibly large. But he was no longer alone, no longer unwanted, no longer ignorant of who and what he was. Then I'm ready, he said simply. To learn, at least. The rest. I guess we'll figure that out as we go. Sirius grinned, a flash of the carefree young man he'd once been breaking through the haunted exterior. That's the spirit, Prongslet. One step at a time. As the adults began discussing specifics, Harry turned to Fleur. Are you sure you want to be part of this? He asked quietly. It sounds dangerous. Fleur's expression was solemn beyond her years. You are my mate, Harry Potter. Your fight is my fight. Your destiny is my destiny. Her young face softened into a smile. Besides, Veela are very good at dangerous things. We're not delicate flowers, you know. Harry couldn't help but smile back. Whatever lay ahead, training, Hogwarts, even eventually facing Voldemort, at least he wouldn't face it alone. He had Sirius and Remus connecting him to his parents. He had the Veela, who had claimed him as their own. He had Dumbledore, who seemed genuinely determined to make amends for past mistakes. And he had Fleur, whose magic had recognized his before either of them fully understood what it meant. For a boy who had spent his first 5 years believing he was unwanted, it was more than enough. It was everything. The great hall of Hogwarts buzzed with the usual start-of-term excitement. First years waited nervously to be sorted, returning students caught up with friends at their house tables, and the enchanted ceiling reflected a clear, star-strewn night sky. At the staff table, Albus Dumbledore surveyed the scene with his customary twinkle, though those who knew him well might have noticed a certain tension beneath his serene exterior. Beside him, Minerva McGonagall reviewed her list of new students, pausing at 2 names in particular. "It's time, Albus," she murmured, rising to retrieve the sorting hat. As the sorting ceremony began, the great doors of the hall opened once more, and 2 figures entered, a boy and a girl, both clearly first years but somehow set apart from their peers. The boy had unruly black hair and vivid green eyes behind round glasses, while the girl possessed a silvery blonde mane and carried herself with unusual grace. Whispers erupted throughout the hall. "Is that Harry Potter? The boy who lived? Who's the girl with him?" "That's the Veela, the one from the papers." Harry and Fleur moved forward together, seemingly oblivious to the stares and murmurs. 6 years had transformed Harry from the malnourished, frightened child of Privet Drive into a confident young wizard of 11. Though still on the smaller side, he moved with the easy self-assurance of someone comfortable in his own skin and magic. At his side, Fleur Delacour, now 14, maintained a protective closeness that spoke volumes about their unusual bond. Unlike Harry, who wore standard Hogwarts robes awaiting house colors, Fleur was dressed in the pale blue uniform of Beauxbatons Academy, a compromise negotiated between the schools to accommodate the mate bond while respecting educational traditions. As they reached the front of the hall, Professor McGonagall gave them a rare smile. "We will continue with the sorting," she announced to the watching students. "Delacour, Fleur." Fleur squeezed Harry's hand once before stepping forward to sit on the stool. McGonagall placed the sorting hat on her head, where it sat for nearly a full minute before declaring, "Ravenclaw." The Ravenclaw table erupted in cheers as Fleur removed the hat and moved to join her new house. Unlike typical sortings, however, she remained standing, waiting. "Potter, Harry." If the hall had been buzzing before, it now fell into absolute silence as Harry stepped forward. The sorting hat settled over his eyes, and Harry heard its familiar voice in his mind. "Ah, Harry Potter at last. I've been wondering when I'd get to sort you. Most interesting. The Horcrux is gone, I see. Good work by the Veela. And this bond, remarkable, truly remarkable. Your mind is quite extraordinary, Mr. Potter. You do well in any house, you know." "I know," Harry thought back. "But I'd prefer to be with Fleur." The hat chuckled. "Of course you would. But are you sure that's best for your development? Gryffindor would nurture your courage, Hufflepuff your loyalty, Slytherin your ambition. Ravenclaw would nurture my mind," Harry countered. "And I think, given what I'm facing, that's what I need most." "Wise indeed," the hat conceded. "Very well then, Ravenclaw." The blue and bronze table cheered wildly as Harry removed the hat and joined Fleur, the 2 of them finally taking their seats among their new housemates. At the staff table, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled with genuine pleasure. It had been a long, sometimes difficult 6 years since that fateful day when a young Veela had recognized her mate in a neglected little boy. There had been political battles, magical challenges, and personal reckonings. The Horcrux was gone from Harry's scar, though 5 others still remained to be found. Voldemort was still out there somewhere, weakened but not defeated. But looking at Harry Potter now, healthy, happy, surrounded by friends and protectors, his magic no longer suppressed by darkness, Dumbledore felt something he hadn't truly expected to feel: hope. Real hope. The Veela had declared war on Albus Dumbledore 6 years ago, and in losing that war, Dumbledore had gained something far more valuable than control. He had gained perspective. As the feast appeared on the tables and the hall filled with the sounds of celebration, Harry looked up at the staff table and met Dumbledore's gaze. The boy smiled, not the innocent smile of a child, but the knowing smile of someone beginning to understand his place in the world and ready to face whatever came next. Dumbledore raised his goblet in silent toast. The war was over. The real challenge was just beginning. Chapter 3, The Awakening. The Ravenclaw common room bathed in pre-dawn light as Harry Potter stood by the tall windows, watching the Scottish Highlands emerge from darkness. At 14, he'd grown into a lean, athletic build, though he remained slightly shorter than his yearmates, a lingering effect of early childhood malnutrition that even years of proper care couldn't fully reverse. Couldn't sleep again? Fleur's voice came from behind him, soft but alert despite the early hour. Harry turned to find her descending the spiral staircase from the girls' dormitories, already dressed in her Beauxbatons uniform, the pale blue silk contrasting with the Ravenclaw blue that adorned much of the common room. The dreams are getting clearer, he admitted. He's planning something. Something big. Fleur crossed to him, concern etched on her face. At 17, she had blossomed into a young woman of extraordinary beauty, even by Veela standards. Her silver blonde hair cascaded down her back, and her features had matured into an elegant harmony that turned heads wherever she went. Yet in moments like this, alone with Harry, there was none of the aloof poise she presented to the world, only warmth and worry for her mate. "Tell me," she urged, taking his hands in hers. "Voldemort's found a way back," Harry said quietly. "Not just the formless wraith he's been since that Halloween, but a body. He needs 3 things, the bone of his father, the flesh of a servant, and—" He hesitated. "The blood of an enemy," Fleur finished, her grip tightening. "Your blood?" Harry nodded. "He's convinced it has to be me. Something about using my mother's protection to strengthen himself. Then we must ensure he never gets the chance." Fleur's voice hardened with determination. "Have you told Sirius?" "I sent him an owl last night, and I'll speak to Professor Flitwick after breakfast." Harry ran a hand through his perpetually untamed hair. 3 Horcruxes down, 3 to go, and he's already making his move. "We're running out of time." Fleur led him to a comfortable sofa near the dormant fireplace. The common room remained empty except for them. Most Ravenclaws took full advantage of weekend mornings to sleep in. "What does your scar tell you?" she asked. Harry touched his forehead reflexively. The lightning bolt was still there, but it had faded to a thin, silvery line after the final Veela purification ritual 5 years ago. "Nothing. That connection is gone, thankfully. These dreams are different, more like glimpses through a long-distance telescope. I'm seeing his plans, not feeling his emotions." "Your natural legilimency," Fleur nodded. "Professor Snape said this might happen as your abilities developed." Harry still found it strange to think of Severus Snape as one of his mentors, but the Dar Potions master had proven an invaluable teacher of occlumency and legilimency over the past 3 years. Their relationship remained complicated. Snape could never fully separate Harry from his father, but mutual respect had gradually replaced initial antagonism. "I just wish I could see where he is," Harry sighed. "All I get are fragments, a graveyard, a large house on a hill, a cauldron bubbling with some potion I don't recognize." "That's still more than we had yesterday," Fleur pointed out pragmatically. "And with the diary, ring, and locket destroyed, he's significantly weakened already." The mention of the locket brought a shadow to Harry's face. Finding Slytherin's locket had led them to the truth about Regulus Black, Sirius's younger brother, and his defection from the Death Eaters. The revelation had hit Sirius hard, learning that his brother had died trying to destroy one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, rather than as a loyal Death Eater as everyone had believed. "I keep thinking about the remaining ones," Harry said. "Dumbledore believes they're tied to the Founders, Hufflepuff's cup, something of Ravenclaw's. And Nagini, his snake," Fleur finished. "The only living Horcrux besides what you were." Harry nodded grimly. 3 years of research, tracking, and careful planning had led to the destruction of 3 Horcruxes. Each victory had felt momentous, yet each had also revealed how much further they had to go. "We should get to breakfast," Fleur said, glancing at the enchanted clock on the wall. "You have that strategy meeting with Dumbledore and Sirius afterward, don't you?" Harry stood, offering her his hand. We have that meeting. Where I go, you go, remember? Fleur smiled, the simple expression transforming her face. As if I could forget. Come on, before the first years arrive and start asking for your autograph again. Harry groaned. That was one time, and I still think Fred and George put them up to it. As they left the common room, the bronze eagle knocker posed a riddle which they answered in unison, a habit that had initially surprised their housemates but was now accepted as just another quirk of the unusual pair. Walking through the castle's quiet morning corridors, they fell into comfortable silence, hands linked, minds connected by bonds both magical and emotional. 3 years at Hogwarts had changed them both, but the core of what had begun that day in Privet Drive remained unaltered. Where Harry went, Fleur followed, and where Fleur led, Harry trusted. It wasn't a matter of dependency but of choice, renewed daily and strengthened by every challenge they faced together. And with Voldemort's return imminent, their greatest challenge yet lay just ahead. Albus Dumbledore's office had changed subtly over the years of Harry's acquaintance with it. Books on Horcruxes and soul magic now occupied prominent positions on the shelves, and a large map of Britain covered one wall, magical markers indicating sites of suspected Death Eater activity. Ah, Harry, Miss Delacour, excellent timing. Dumbledore rose from behind his desk as they entered. Despite his advanced age, the headmaster remained a formidable presence, though the blackened, withered appearance of his right hand served as a constant reminder of the curse he'd suffered destroying the gaunt ring Horcrux. Sirius Black and Remus Lupin were already present, along with Severus Snape and Minerva McGonagall. Sirius immediately crossed the room to embrace his godson. At 44, with his wrongful imprisonment well behind him, Sirius had regained much of his youthful vigor, though silver now threaded through his dark hair. "How are you holding up?" he asked Harry quietly. "I'm fine," Harry assured him, though the dark circles under his eyes suggested otherwise. "Your letter concerned us all," Remus said, joining them. Like Sirius, he looked healthier than when Harry had first met him. Regular employment as Hogwarts defense against the dark arts professor and access to improved wolfsbane potion had worked wonders for the werewolf's constitution. "I've shared the details with everyone," Dumbledore said, gesturing for them to take seats around his desk. "Harry's visions suggest Voldemort is preparing for a rebirth ritual, likely during the coming full moon. Which is 2 weeks away," Snape added. His voice remained coldly precise, but years of working toward Voldemort's defeat had tempered his demeanor somewhat. "If Potter's interpretations are correct. They have been so far," McGonagall pointed out. "Mr. Potter's natural legilimency has proven remarkably accurate, particularly regarding you-know-who." Harry felt a familiar tension headache building behind his eyes. These strategy sessions always left him drained, not from the planning itself, but from the weight of expectation that settled on his shoulders each time they discussed Voldemort. Sensing his discomfort, Fleur's hand found his under the table, her thumb tracing soothing circles against his palm. The simple touch centered him, as it always did. "The ritual requires my blood," Harry said, bringing the discussion back to the essential point. "Which means he needs to capture me, or at least obtain a sample somehow. Which is precisely why you will not be leaving the castle grounds until this threat is neutralized," McGonagall stated firmly. Harry shook his head. "If we keep playing defense, we'll eventually lose. We need to be proactive, find him before he's ready." "And how do you propose we do that?" Snape asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer and disapproved. "I can try to follow the connection back," Harry said. "If I can see through his eyes, maybe I can identify where he is." The reaction was immediate and vehement. "Absolutely not," Sirius growled. "Out of the question," McGonagall declared. "Harry, the risks," Remus began. Only Dumbledore and Fleur remained silent, both studying Harry with similar expressions of calculation. "It's too dangerous," Sirius insisted. "Even with the Horcrux gone, any deliberate connection to Voldemort's mind could be disastrous." "I agree with Black, much as it pains me," Snape said dryly. "Your occlumency has improved remarkably, Potter," but deliberately entering the Dark Lord's mind is several orders of magnitude more dangerous than passively receiving visions. Harry had expected resistance, but the united front frustrated him nonetheless. Then what do you suggest? Wait until he finds a way to get to me. We've been reactive for 3 years, and we're still missing 3 Horcruxes. Actually, Dumbledore interjected mildly, that may no longer be accurate. All eyes turned to the headmaster, who reached into a drawer and withdrew a small, badly damaged golden cup with a badger engraved on the side. Hufflepuff's cup, Harry breathed. Recovered from the Lestrange vault at Gringotts 3 days ago, Dumbledore confirmed. Thanks to some extraordinarily complex negotiations between the Ministry and the Goblin Nation. And you're just telling us now? Sirius demanded. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. I wanted to be certain we could destroy it safely first. Fiend fire is effective but notoriously difficult to control, and I was reluctant to risk transporting it to the Veela Enclave. How did you destroy it, then? Fleur asked. Basilisk venom, Dumbledore replied simply. From the Chamber of Secrets. Professor Snape led an expedition to harvest the remains of the beast from your second year, Harry. Harry glanced at Snape with new respect. The potion's master gave a curt nod in acknowledgement. So we're down to 2, Harry said. Something of Ravenclaw's and Nagini. Regarding Ravenclaw's item, Dumbledore continued, I have a strong suspicion it may be her lost diadem, a tiara said to enhance the wisdom of the wearer. But it's been lost for centuries, McGonagall protested. Perhaps not lost, merely hidden, Dumbledore mused. And potentially here at Hogwarts. Harry straightened in his chair. Here. Why would you think that? Because Tom Riddle was fascinated by Hogwarts and its secrets. It was the first place he considered home, much as it was for you, Harry. The symbolism of hiding a piece of his soul here would have appealed to him greatly. Fleur's eyes narrowed in thought. The room of hidden things, she said suddenly. Harry turned to her. What? The room on the 7th floor that changes based on need, Fleur explained. Last year, when I was looking for a quiet place to practice my transfiguration, it transformed into an enormous storage room filled with thousands of objects. Things students and staff have hidden over centuries. Dumbledore beamed at her. Precisely my thinking, Miss Delacour. The Room of Requirement, as it is sometimes called, would be an ideal hiding place, hiding in plain sight, as it were, among countless other lost items. We should search it immediately, Harry said, half rising from his seat. And we will, Dumbledore assured him. But methodically and with proper precautions. If the diadem is indeed there, it will be heavily protected by dark magic. Harry reluctantly settled back down. And Nagini? The snake stays with Voldemort, which means we can't get to it until we find him. Which brings us back to your suggestion of following the mental connection, Dumbledore acknowledged. While I understand your eagerness, Harry, I must side with Professor Snape and your godfather on this. The risks outweigh the potential benefits. Harry opened his mouth to argue, but Fleur squeezed his hand in warning. Perhaps there's a compromise, she suggested. Harry continues to observe the visions as they come naturally, while the rest of us focus on finding the diadem. Once we have it, we'll be in a much stronger position to confront Voldemort directly. Dumbledore nodded approvingly. A sensible approach. And I believe we have resources we've not yet fully utilized. He turned to Snape. Severus, what news from your former associates? Snape's expression soured further. Whispers only. Many feel the mark darkening, growing stronger. They anticipate a summons but know nothing concrete. What about the Malfoys? Sirius asked. Lucius was one of his inner circle. Lucius Malfoy remains in Azkaban following the diary incident, Snape reminded him. Narcissa maintains the family's neutrality, at least outwardly. And young Mr. Malfoy. His eyes flicked briefly to Harry. Draco's been watching me, Harry finished. More than usual. The Malfoy heirs' relationship with Harry had evolved strangely over their years at Hogwarts. Initial hostility had given way to wary observation after Harry's sorting into Ravenclaw instead of Gryffindor. The arrest of Lucius Malfoy for possessing the diary Horcrux had further complicated matters, leaving Draco in an uncomfortable position, son of a disgraced Death Eater, yet himself untainted by direct association with Voldemort. Mr. Malfoy may be receiving pressure from certain quarters, Snape said carefully. I will speak with him. In the meantime, Dumbledore said, rising to his feet to signal the meeting's end, we will organize a systematic search of the Room of Hidden Things. Harry, Miss Delacour, I would value your participation, but only with proper supervision. We'll help too, Sirius volunteered, gesturing between himself and Remus. And I will consult the other heads of house, McGonagall added. This must be handled discreetly to avoid alerting Voldemort's sympathizers within the school. As they prepared to depart, Dumbledore held Harry back with a gentle hand on his shoulder. A moment, if you would, Harry. When the others had exited, Fleur with obvious reluctance and only after a reassuring nod from Harry, Dumbledore regarded him thoughtfully. You're frustrated, the headmaster observed. You believe we're being overly cautious. Harry sighed. I understand the concerns. I do. But this connection exists whether I use it or not. And every day we wait gives him more time to prepare. A valid point, Dumbledore conceded. But consider this, Voldemort believes you remain ignorant of his Horcruxes. He has no reason to suspect we've destroyed 4 of them already. That misapprehension is perhaps our greatest advantage. Until he succeeds in returning to a body, Harry countered. Then it won't matter what he knows or doesn't know about the Horcruxes. He'll come for me either way. Dumbledore studied him over his half-moon spectacles. You've changed, Harry. The boy I first met 9 years ago would not speak to me with such forthright challenge. The boy you first met was scared and confused, Harry said, not unkindly. I've had good teachers since then. A smile touched Dumbledore's lips. Indeed you have. The Veela, Sirius, Remus, even Severus, in his way. They've prepared you well. His expression grew serious again. Which is why I trust you to make the right decision regarding this mental connection. Not the reckless one, nor the fearful one, but the right one. Harry blinked, surprised by the implied permission. You're saying? I'm saying that you have demonstrated wisdom beyond your years, Harry. If you determine that the need to locate Voldemort outweighs the risks of actively pursuing the connection, I will not stand in your way. Dumbledore held up his blackened hand. I know something about calculated risks, after all. Harry nodded slowly, understanding the responsibility being placed in his hands. I'll discuss it with Fleur. And Professor Snape. An excellent plan. Now, I believe Miss Delacour is waiting rather impatiently outside my door. Best not keep her waiting, Veela patience has its limits, as I've learned to my cost. As Harry rejoined Fleur in the corridor outside, he found himself pondering Dumbledore's words. The headmaster had changed too over the years, from the manipulative chess master who'd left Harry with the Dursleys to a more transparent mentor who trusted Harry to make his own choices. It was, Harry reflected, one of the more positive outcomes of the Veela's declaration of war all those years ago. In losing control, Dumbledore had gained perspective. In surrendering authority, he had earned genuine respect. Now, if they could just find that diadem. The Room of Hidden Things was vaster and more chaotic than Harry had imagined. Towering piles of broken furniture, banned books, confiscated magical items, and forgotten student possessions created a labyrinthine landscape that seemed to stretch endlessly in all directions. This is going to take forever, Ron Weasley groaned, surveying the room with dismay. Not if we're systematic, Hermione Granger replied briskly, already pulling out parchment to sketch a search grid. Harry smiled as he watched his friends fall into their familiar dynamic. Though sorted into different houses, Ron and Gryffindor, Hermione and Ravenclaw with Harry and Fleur, the three had formed a solid friendship during their first year, cemented by the troll incident that Halloween. Adding Fleur to their group had been seamless. Her protective instincts toward Harry had initially made her wary of others, but Hermione's brilliant mind and Ron's unwavering loyalty had quickly earned her respect. "We're looking for a tiara, right?" Ron asked. "Small, shiny, probably looks expensive." "Ravenclaw's diadem is more than just expensive jewelry, Ron," Hermione corrected. "It's a powerful magical artifact said to enhance the wearer's wisdom and intelligence. And it's also a container for a piece of Voldemort's twisted soul," Harry added grimly. "So nobody touches it directly when we find it. We contain it and take it straight to Dumbledore." They split into pairs, Harry with Fleur, Ron with Hermione, and began methodically working through the room, using magical detection spells to identify dark objects and potential Horcruxes. After nearly 2 hours of fruitless searching, Harry felt frustration mounting. "This is like looking for a needle in a haystack," he muttered, moving aside a teetering stack of outdated textbooks. "Perhaps we're approaching this wrong," Fleur suggested, pausing to tuck a strand of silver blonde hair behind her ear. "Voldemort wouldn't have simply tossed the diadem anywhere. He would have placed it somewhere significant, perhaps even somewhere visible. Hiding in plain sight," Harry mused, remembering Dumbledore's words. He turned slowly, trying to see the room through Voldemort's eyes. What would appeal to the Dark Lord's sense of irony, his appreciation for meaningful symbolism? His gaze settled on a tarnished bust of an austere-looking wizard, perched atop a wobbly cabinet. Something glinted dully on the bust's head. "There," Harry breathed, pointing. Fleur followed his gaze and nodded slowly. "It feels right," she agreed. "I can sense something not pleasant." They approached cautiously, wands drawn. As they drew closer, the dull glint resolved into a delicate tiara, its silver surface darkened with age but still unmistakably valuable. Engraved across its surface were the words, "Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure." "That's it," Harry confirmed. "Ravenclaw's lost diadem." He called for Ron and Hermione, who hurried over from their section. Hermione gasped when she saw it. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Even tarnished like that." "And extremely dangerous," Harry reminded her. "I can feel the dark magic from here." "How do we transport it safely?" Ron asked, keeping a respectful distance. Fleur removed a dragon-hide pouch from her robes. "Professor Flitwick enchanted this for us. It should contain any curses or compulsion effects until we get it to Dumbledore." Using a levitation charm to avoid direct contact, Harry carefully lifted the diadem and guided it into the pouch, which Fleur sealed immediately with a complicated wand movement. "5 down, 1 to go," Harry said with grim satisfaction. "Just the snake now," Ron nodded. "And then you know who himself." "Voldemort," Harry corrected automatically. "Fear of the name increases fear of the thing itself." I know, Ron finished with a good-natured eye roll. "Hard habit to break." As they left the room of requirement, Harry felt a curious mixture of triumph and apprehension. Finding the diadem was a significant victory, but it also meant they were one step closer to the final confrontation, a confrontation the prophecy suggested he couldn't avoid. "We should take this directly to Dumbledore," Hermione said, eyeing the pouch as though it might burst open at any moment. "I'll take it," Harry decided. "Fleur, would you let Sirius and Remus know we found it?" "Ron, Hermione, it might be best if you return to your common rooms for now. The fewer people seen delivering this to Dumbledore's office, the better." His friends accepted the logic, though Fleur hesitated. "Are you sure you want to go alone?" Harry nodded. "I'll be fine. It's contained, and I'm just going to the headmaster's office." After a quick embrace from each of his friends, and a longer one from Fleur, who whispered, "Be careful," against his ear, Harry set off toward Dumbledore's office, the dragon-hide pouch secure in his inner robe pocket. He was halfway there when a familiar drawling voice stopped him. "All alone, Potter? Where's your Veela shadow?" Harry turned to find Draco Malfoy leaning against a stone column, arms crossed, his pale pointed face set in its habitual sneer. But something about Malfoy's posture struck Harry as off, more defensive than aggressive, his customary arrogance undercut by a tension around his eyes. "I don't have time for this right now, Malfoy," Harry said, moving to continue on his way. "Wait," Draco said quickly, pushing away from the column. I need to talk to you." Harry paused, surprised by the genuine urgency in Malfoy's voice. "About?" Draco glanced around the empty corridor nervously. "Not here. Somewhere private." Harry's hand moved closer to his wand. After nearly 4 years of mutual antagonism, Malfoy's sudden desire for a private conversation seemed suspicious at best. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it here." Draco's pale face flushed with frustration. "Fine. He's coming back. The Dark Lord. And he has plans for Hogwarts. For you." Though this wasn't news to Harry, hearing it confirmed by Malfoy sent a chill down his spine. "How do you know this?" "My father may be in Azkaban, but my family still has connections." Draco's voice dropped even lower. "My Aunt Bellatrix visited our manor last week. She's helping with the preparations for his return." "Bellatrix Lestrange? She escaped Azkaban?" "Not officially," Draco said. "It's being kept quiet. But yes, she and several others are out." Harry's mind raced. If Death Eaters were escaping Azkaban without public knowledge, the Ministry was either compromised or dangerously incompetent. Neither option was reassuring. "Why are you telling me this?" Harry asked, studying Malfoy's face for signs of deception. Draco looked away, his usual swagger notably absent. "Because my father's in Azkaban thanks to that diary business. Because my mother doesn't want me to follow the same path. Because..." He hesitated, then met Harry's eyes directly. "Because they have plans for me too, and I don't want any part of them." The raw honesty in Malfoy's voice was startling. Harry had never seen the Slytherin so vulnerable, so stripped of his practiced aristocratic disdain. "What kind of plans?" Harry pressed. "The kind that involved taking the mark. Becoming one of them." Draco's hand moved unconsciously to his left forearm. "My father always spoke of the Dark Lord's return as a glorious event. But the way my aunt talks about it, like it's some kind of religious ecstasy, it's not right, Potter. And what they want me to do. Which is..." Draco swallowed hard. "They need someone inside Hogwarts. Someone who can get to you. Create an opportunity." The pieces clicked together in Harry's mind. "The ritual. They need my blood." Draco's eyes widened in surprise. "You know about that?" "I know more than you think," Harry said grimly. "Including what's in my pocket right now." He patted the dragon-hide pouch meaningfully. Confusion flickered across Malfoy's face, but he pressed on. "Listen, Potter, I'm not asking to be friends. I need options. My mother's trying to get us out of the country, but with my father in Azkaban and the Ministry watching us, it's complicated." Harry studied Malfoy thoughtfully. The Slytherin story aligned with his visions and with Snape's intelligence. And there was something in Draco's demeanor, a desperate sincerity, that felt genuine. "Come with me to Dumbledore," Harry suggested. "Tell him what you've told me." "Dumbledore?" Draco scoffed reflexively, then caught himself. "I don't know, Potter. If word gets back to my aunt or the others." "Dumbledore can protect you and your mother," Harry insisted. "Better than you can protect yourselves. And your information about Bellatrix could be crucial." Draco hesitated, visibly torn. Finally, he gave a curt nod. "Fine. But if this backfires..." "It won't," Harry assured him, though he felt less confident than he sounded. "Come on, I'm headed there now anyway." As they walked together toward the headmaster's office, Harry felt an odd sense of worlds shifting. Draco Malfoy, seeking his help. Death Eaters escaping Azkaban in secret. A Horcrux in his pocket. Voldemort's imminent return. The game was changing, the stakes rising. And Harry couldn't shake the feeling that they were rapidly approaching the point of no return. The full moon hung heavy and bright over the Scottish Highlands, casting long shadows across Hogwarts grounds. In the astronomy tower, Harry stood with his back to the stone parapet, surrounded by those who had become his family and closest allies over the past 9 years. Sirius and Remus flanked him on one side, Fleur on the other. Behind them stood Dumbledore, McGonagall, and Snape, along with Ron and Hermione. Even Draco Malfoy was present, standing somewhat apart from the others, his face pale in the moonlight. "It's time," Harry said quietly. "He'll be performing the ritual tonight." The past week had been a whirlwind of preparation and discovery. Draco's information about Bellatrix had proven accurate, leading to the revelation that several high-security prisoners had indeed escaped Azkaban through what appeared to be inside help. More disturbingly, Draco had been able to provide a location, the old Riddle House in Little Hangleton, where Voldemort was gathering his strength for the rebirth ritual. The Diadem Horcrux had been destroyed using basilisk venom, leaving only Nagini. And now, with the ritual imminent, they faced a critical decision. "The plan remains as discussed," Dumbledore said. "We cannot prevent the ritual entirely, he has the necessary components, including substitute blood from another enemy. But we can be ready to strike when he is at his most vulnerable, immediately following his return." "And the snake?" Sirius asked. "Will almost certainly be present," Snape confirmed. "The Dark Lord keeps Nagini close at all times." Harry took a deep breath, feeling the weight of what they were about to attempt. "I still think I should be there." "Absolutely not," Sirius said firmly. "We've been through this, Harry. Your presence would only strengthen him further." "The Order members are already in position around Little Hangleton," Remus added. "Moody, Tonks, Kingsley, the Weasleys, they know what to do." "And the Ministry?" Draco asked, speaking up for the first time. "Minister Bones has been briefed," McGonagall replied. "A special Auror task force is on standby, but they will not move without our signal. We cannot risk tipping our hand prematurely." Amelia Bones had become Minister for Magic 2 years earlier, following a series of scandals that had finally driven Fudge from office. Her appointment had marked a significant improvement in the Ministry's approach to the brewing crisis, including full acknowledgement of Voldemort's potential return. "All that remains," Dumbledore said, "is to confirm when the ritual begins. For that, we must rely on Professor Snape." Snape nodded grimly. His dark mark had been growing steadily darker over the past month, and they expected Voldemort would summon his Death Eaters to witness his rebirth. "And if Snape is summoned, he'll alert the Order," Harry continued, "who will move in once the ritual is complete but before Voldemort has fully regained his strength. Their primary target is Nagini. Once the snake is destroyed, Voldemort becomes mortal," Hermione recited. "Then Professor Dumbledore and the Aurors can." She trailed off, unwilling to complete the thought. Despite years of preparation for this moment, the reality of what they were planning, the coordinated killing of a wizard, even one as evil as Voldemort, remained sobering. "There is still the prophecy to consider," Dumbledore reminded them gently. "It may be that Harry must play a role in the final confrontation, even if he is not present for the ritual itself." Harry felt Fleur's hand slip into his, warm and reassuring. After 9 years, the physical connection between them had evolved from childish comfort to something deeper, a grounding presence that helped Harry focus his magic and center his thoughts. "We've discussed this," Harry said. "The prophecy is ambiguous. Neither can live while the other survives could mean many things. It doesn't necessarily mean I have to be the one to cast the final spell. But your mother's protection," McGonagall began, "will be neutralized once he uses my substitute blood in the ritual," Harry finished. "After that, I have no magical advantage over him that any of you don't have. Except perhaps." He hesitated. "Except the Veela bond," Fleur completed. "My magic, amplifying his." Something Voldemort knows nothing about. This was the wild card they had been carefully concealing for years. The mate bond between Harry and Fleur had matured as they aged, evolving from the simple recognition it had been in childhood to a complex magical symbiosis. When channeling magic together, they could achieve effects beyond what either could accomplish alone, a phenomenon that Dumbledore believed might be the power the Dark Lord knows not mentioned in the prophecy. Which is precisely why you both should remain here, safe at Hogwarts, Sirius insisted. If the initial strike fails, if Voldemort escapes, then we might need that advantage. But we don't risk you unnecessarily. Before Harry could respond, Snape suddenly hissed in pain, his right hand clasping his left forearm. It's happening, he said through gritted teeth. The mark burns. He's calling his followers. The atmosphere in the tower instantly shifted from tense planning to urgent action. Dumbledore turned to Snape. You know what to do, Severus. Be careful. Snape nodded curtly and strode toward the tower stairs, his black robes billowing behind him. I'll alert the order, Remus said, already producing his wand to cast a Patronus message. And I will contact Minister Bones, McGonagall added, following suit. As the adults mobilized, Harry turned to his friends. This is it, he said quietly. One way or another, tonight changes everything. Hermione's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Be careful, all of you, she said, embracing Harry tightly. And remember, we've prepared for this. Yeah, mate, Ron added, clapping a hand on Harry's shoulder. You've got this. We all do. Draco remained apart, his expression conflicted. If he succeeds, he said quietly, my mother is under order protection at a safe house, as you requested, Dumbledore assured him. She will remain secure regardless of tonight's outcome. Sirius approached Harry, his expression serious. Stay with Dumbledore, he instructed. No matter what happens, no matter what news comes, promise me you'll stay here at Hogwarts until we send word it's safe. Harry wanted to protest, to insist on accompanying them, but the pleading look in his godfather's eyes stopped him. I promise, he said reluctantly. But Sirius, be careful. You too, Remus. Sirius pulled him into a fierce embrace. Always am, Promslet, he murmured. Your dad would be so proud of you. Lily too. As the Order members departed, leaving Harry, Fleur, Ron, Hermione, and Draco with Dumbledore in the astronomy tower, an uneasy silence fell. Now came the hardest part, waiting. Perhaps we should move to my office, Dumbledore suggested. It will be more comfortable, and we can monitor communications from there. No one argued. As they descended the tower stairs, Harry felt Fleur's concern through their bond, not just for the situation, but for him specifically. You're not planning to keep that promise, are you? She whispered, so only he could hear. Harry glanced at her, unsurprised by her perception. I don't know, he admitted. I want to, but if something goes wrong. If something goes wrong, we go together, Fleur said firmly. No matter what, Harry. Where you go, I go. The familiar phrase, first spoken when they were children, still held the same power. Harry nodded, grateful beyond words for her unwavering presence in his life. As they entered Dumbledore's office, the waiting game began in earnest. Minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. Fawkes occasionally trilled soft, comforting notes from his perch, but otherwise the room remained tense and quiet, broken only by the occasional Patronus message updating them on the Order's position. Then, suddenly, Fawkes let out a sharp, alarming cry. Dumbledore, who had been pacing near his desk, went completely still. What is it? Harry asked, instantly alert. Something has happened, Dumbledore said, his voice unnaturally tight. Something unexpected. Before he could elaborate, a silvery Patronus in the shape of a wolf burst into the room. Remus's voice emanated from it, tense and urgent, ritual complete. Voldemort has returned. Ambush compromised, traitor in our ranks. Heavy casualties. Nagini still alive. Sirius wounded. Fall back to secondary position. Do not, repeat, do not let Harry leave the castle. The Patronus dissolved, leaving stunned silence in its wake. No, Harry whispered, rising to his feet. No, this can't be happening. Harry, Dumbledore began, moving toward him with surprising speed for his age. You must remain calm. We knew this was a possibility. Casualties? Harry demanded. Who? How bad is Sirius hurt? And what secondary position? The Shrieking Shack, Hermione said quietly. That was the fallback point if the little Hangleton operation failed. Harry was already moving toward the door when Dumbledore's magic sealed it shut. I cannot allow you to leave, Harry, the headmaster said gravely. Not only because of your promise to Sirius, but because it is precisely what Voldemort wants, to draw you out. My godfather is injured, Harry said, his voice dangerously quiet. Our friends may be dying. And you expect me to just sit here? I expect you to trust the plan we all agreed upon, Dumbledore replied. The Order members are trained for this. They will regroup and retreat if necessary. And if they can't? Harry challenged. If Voldemort's forces overwhelm them? What then? Before Dumbledore could answer, another Patronus appeared, this one a lynx, speaking with Kingsley Shacklebolt's deep, calming voice despite the dire message, situation critical. Order surrounded at Shack. Reinforcements needed urgently. Sirius critical but stable. Moody down. Tonks injured. Ministry forces delayed by false emergency in London. This time, even Dumbledore looked shaken. The Ministry forces were our backup plan, he murmured. If they've been diverted. Then the Order is trapped with no way out, Ron finished, his freckles standing out starkly against his pale face. Harry turned to Fleur, their eyes meeting in silent communication. She nodded once, decisively. Professor, Harry said, turning back to Dumbledore, you know what we have to do. Dumbledore studied him for a long moment, conflict evident in his aged face. The combined magic of your bond, he said finally. You believe it would be enough? It's what the prophecy meant, Harry said with conviction. Not that I have to kill him myself, but that only the power generated through our bond, something created by love, something he can't understand, can ultimately defeat him. And Nagini? Dumbledore pressed. Without destroying the final Horcrux, we'll handle it, Fleur interjected. Together. Dumbledore looked from Harry to Fleur and back again, seeing not children but the capable young adults they had become. Very well, he said finally. But not alone. Mr. Weasley, Miss Granger, Mr. Malfoy, please alert Professors McGonagall and Flitwick. Tell them to gather any available staff members and meet us at the Hogsmeade apparition point immediately. I'm coming too, Draco said unexpectedly. When everyone turned to look at him in surprise, he lifted his chin defiantly. My aunt is probably out there with him. I know how she thinks, how she fights. Dumbledore nodded. Very well. Go, quickly. As their friends rushed to follow instructions, Dumbledore opened a cabinet behind his desk and withdrew a familiar ruby-encrusted sword. The Sword of Gryffindor, he said, offering it to Harry. Impregnated with basilisk venom from your encounter in the chamber. It can destroy Horcruxes. Harry accepted the sword, feeling its perfect balance. For Nagini, he understood. Now, Dumbledore said, unsealing the office door with a wave of his hand, let us go to the aid of our friends. And may Merlin help us all. The Shrieking Shack blazed with multicolored spelllight, illuminating the night sky over Hogsmeade like a deadly fireworks display. Dark-robed figures surrounded the dilapidated building, their curses hammering against hastily erected magical shields that were visibly weakening with each impact. From their position at the edge of Hogsmeade, Harry could make out Order members firing defensive spells from the shack's broken windows. Even at this distance, the situation's direness was obvious. they were outnumbered and outflanked, their defensive position crumbling. "We need a distraction," Harry said, gripping the sword of Gryffindor tightly. "Something to draw their attention away from the shack so the order can retreat." "I believe I can provide that," Dumbledore replied, a dangerous glint in his eye. The elderly wizard no longer looked frail or academic, power radiated from him like heat from a furnace. "Minerva, Filius, when I engage Voldemort, lead a flanking attack from the east. Harry, Fleur, focus on Nagini. The snake will likely be near Voldemort himself." "And me?" Draco asked, his wand already drawn. "Stay with Harry and Fleur," Dumbledore instructed. "Your knowledge of Death Eater tactics may prove invaluable." Without further discussion, Dumbledore strode forward, a solitary figure approaching the battlefield with the calm confidence of a wizard who had defeated a Dark Lord before. When he reached the edge of the combat zone, he raised his wand and sent a massive bolt of golden fire into the sky. The effect was immediate. Spellfire around the shack paused as all eyes turned toward the new arrival. A tall, skeletal figure in flowing black robes detached itself from the shadows, Voldemort, newly reborn, his chalk-white face and glowing red eyes visible even from a distance. Dumbledore, his high, cold voice carried clearly across the field. "How predictable. Come to save your precious order." "Hello, Tom," Dumbledore replied conversationally. "I see you've managed to acquire a new body. The previous one was certainly no loss, aesthetically speaking, though I must say this one's an improvement only in that it's corporeal." Voldemort's face contorted with rage. "You dare mock me? I, who have gone further than any wizard in history toward conquering death." "Oh, I dare a great many things, Tom," Dumbledore said, beginning to circle slowly. "Including suggesting that your Horcruxes aren't nearly as secure as you believe." Even from a distance, Harry could see Voldemort's shock. "You know nothing," the Dark Lord hissed, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his serpentine features. "The diary, destroyed. The ring, destroyed. The locket, destroyed. The cup, destroyed. The diadem, destroyed," Dumbledore enumerated calmly. "Only the snake remains, Tom. Only Nagini." Voldemort's composure shattered. With a howl of fury, he launched a barrage of deadly curses at Dumbledore, who deflected them with graceful, efficient movements that belied his age. The duel that ensued was unlike anything Harry had ever witnessed, magic at its most primal and devastating, wielded by two masters at the height of their powers. "Now," Harry whispered to Fleur and Draco. "While they're distracted." Under disillusionment charms, the three teenagers moved swiftly toward the battlefield's eastern edge, where McGonagall and Flitwick were already leading a charge to relieve the besieged Order members. "There," Draco hissed suddenly, pointing toward a clearing where several Death Eaters stood in a protective circle. "That's where the snake will be. My Aunt Bellatrix won't let it out of her sight while the Dark Lord is occupied." Sure enough, Harry could just make out a massive serpent coiled in the circle's center, its scales gleaming in the reflected spelllight. "How do we get past Bellatrix and the others?" Fleur asked. Draco's face was grim. "Leave that to me. When I create an opening, you two go for the snake." Before Harry could question him, Draco had dropped his disillusionment and was striding confidently toward the Death Eater circle. "Aunt Bella," he called. "The Dark Lord sent me to retrieve Nagini." A wild-haired witch with heavy-lidded eyes turned sharply. "Draco," she cackled. "My little nephew, joining the fun at last. How delicious." "The Dark Lord needs Nagini's venom," Draco explained smoothly, approaching the circle. Dumbledore wounded him. Bellatrix's eyes narrowed suspiciously. "He said nothing to me about sending you." "He's a bit busy at the moment, Aunt," Draco drawled, gesturing toward the spectacular duel taking place 50 yards away. "But if you'd prefer to question his orders." The implied threat worked. Bellatrix hesitated, then stepped aside to allow Draco closer to the giant snake. "Crabbe, Goyle, go with him," she ordered two hulking Death Eaters. Make sure nothing happens to our master's precious pet. As Draco and his unwanted escorts moved toward Nagini, Harry and Fleur silently positioned themselves on opposite sides of the clearing, waiting for whatever distraction Draco planned to create. They didn't wait long. As Draco reached the snake, he stumbled deliberately, bumping into Goyle. In the ensuing confusion, he shouted, "Potter! Behind you," while pointing wildly in the opposite direction from where Harry actually stood. The Death Eaters whirled, firing curses blindly into the darkness. In that moment of chaos, Draco dropped to the ground, and Harry and Fleur struck. Fleur's Veela fire, far more controlled and powerful than when she was a child, erupted in a brilliant blue-white arc, cutting off Bellatrix and the other Death Eaters from Nagini. Simultaneously, Harry charged forward, the sword of Gryffindor raised high. Nagini, sensing danger, reared up to strike, but Harry was faster. With one clean swing, guided by years of training and the reflexes honed through Quidditch, he severed the massive snake's head from its body. A terrible scream rent the air, not from the snake, but from Voldemort himself. The Dark Lord broke off his duel with Dumbledore, his inhuman face contorted with shock and rage as he felt the destruction of his final Horcrux. "Now, Harry!" Dumbledore shouted. This was the moment they had prepared for. As Voldemort turned his fury toward them, Harry and Fleur joined hands, standing back to back in the center of the clearing. The mate bond between them, nurtured and strengthened over 9 years, flared to vibrant life. Golden light erupted from their joined hands, spiraling outward in widening circles. Where Harry's magic was raw power and instinctive defense, Fleur's was precision and transformation. Together, they created something new, a harmonized magical force that spread across the battlefield like a wave of living light. Voldemort raised his wand, his face twisted with hatred and incomprehension. "What is this magic?" he demanded. "What are you doing, Potter?" "Something you could never understand," Harry replied, his voice steady despite the enormous magical current flowing through him. "Something created by love, not fear or hatred." "Love?" Voldemort spat. "Dumbledore's favorite delusion. Love won't save you from death, boy." "It already did," Fleur answered, her accent thickening as she channeled more magic into their shared working. "When Lily Potter died for her son. When the Veela recognized him as mine. Love is what has protected Harry all along." Voldemort sneered and launched a killing curse directly at them. But as the green light touched the golden field surrounding Harry and Fleur, something extraordinary happened. The curse didn't rebound, it transformed, its deadly energy dissipating into harmless sparks that were absorbed into the expanding golden light. "Impossible," Voldemort whispered, genuine fear crossing his serpentine features for the first time. "No, Tom," Dumbledore said, moving to stand beside Harry and Fleur. "Not impossible. Merely beyond your comprehension. You divided your soul, diminishing your humanity with each split. But Harry and Fleur have done the opposite, they've created a bond that strengthens both their magic and their humanity." Understanding dawned in Voldemort's red eyes. "The prophecy," he hissed. "The power I know not." "Is this," Harry confirmed, the golden light now pulsing in rhythm with his and Fleur's synchronized heartbeats. "Not just love, but the magic created when two souls choose to connect rather than fragment." With a howl of denial, Voldemort unleashed his full power, a torrent of dark magic aimed directly at the golden shield. For a moment, the darkness seemed to gain ground, pushing back against the light. Harry felt Fleur stagger slightly beside him, their connection wavering under the assault. "Hold on," he whispered to her. "Just a little longer." Drawing from the deepest wells of their magic, Harry and Fleur pushed back. The golden light surged forward again, this time with renewed intensity. Where it touched Death Eaters, they froze in place, their dark marks visibly burning away from their skin. Where it touched injured Order members, wounds began to close and heal. And when it finally reached Voldemort himself, the Dark Lord screamed, a sound of pure agony and disbelief. His newly created body began to crack like porcelain, golden light seeping through the fissures from within. "This isn't the end, Potter," Voldemort gasped, his voice already fading. "Death cannot hold me forever." "Perhaps not," Dumbledore acknowledged. "But love will hold us together while you remain apart. That is your true defeat, Tom, not death, but isolation. The choice you made when you first turned away from human connection." With a final, inhuman shriek, Voldemort's body shattered completely, exploding into ash that scattered on the night wind. The golden light pulsed once more, brilliant enough to illuminate the entire village of Hogsmeade, then gradually faded. In its wake, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. Death Eaters stood frozen or unconscious, their dark magic neutralized by the golden wave. Order members emerged cautiously from the shrieking shack, injured but alive. And at the center of it all, Harry and Fleur remained standing, their hands still joined, exhausted but triumphant. "Is he gone?" Harry asked Dumbledore, his voice hoarse with fatigue. "Really gone this time?" "His body is destroyed, and with all Horcruxes eliminated, his soul cannot anchor itself to this plane," Dumbledore confirmed. "While he may exist as a spectral remnant somewhere, he lacks the power to affect our world directly. For all practical purposes, yes, Harry, Voldemort is gone." The simple statement, delivered without qualification or caveat, struck Harry with unexpected force. For 9 years, his entire conscious life, Voldemort had been a shadow hanging over his future. The prophecy, the Horcruxes, the inevitable confrontation, all had shaped his childhood and adolescence in ways both obvious and subtle. And now, suddenly, it was over. "Sirius," Harry remembered suddenly. "Where's Sirius?" "Here, Prongslit," came a weak voice from nearby. Remus was supporting a pale but conscious Sirius, who managed a pained smile. "Told you to stay at the castle, didn't I? When have I ever been good at following orders?" Harry replied, moving quickly to embrace his godfather, careful of his injuries. "You're going to be okay." "Nothing Poppy can't fix," Sirius assured him. "Though I might be stuck in the hospital wing for a few days." His eyes moved to the scorched ground where Voldemort had stood. "Is it really over?" "It is," Dumbledore confirmed, joining them. "Thanks to Harry and Miss Delacour, and their rather remarkable interpretation of the prophecy." Fleur, who had been checking on injured Order members with her mother, who had arrived with the Hogwarts reinforcements, returned to Harry's side. "Not just us," she said firmly. "Everyone here fought. Everyone risked everything." "Speaking of which," Harry said, looking around, "where's Draco?" They found him being tended to by Madame Pomfrey, a nasty burn on his arm where his Aunt Bellatrix had struck him with a curse during the chaos. Bellatrix herself was among the captured Death Eaters, restrained by magical bindings and looking murderously at her nephew. "You'll regret your betrayal," she spat as they approached. "The Dark Lord will return, and when he does—" "Oh, shut up, Aunt Bella," Draco interrupted wearily. "It's over. Go back to Azkaban where you belong." As Ministry Aurors finally arrived to take custody of the captured Death Eaters, Harry found himself standing somewhat apart from the activity, trying to process everything that had happened. Fleur joined him, her hand finding his automatically. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. "I don't know," Harry admitted. "Relieved. Exhausted. And a bit lost. For so long, everything was about preparing for this moment. Now that it's here. Now you can live," Fleur completed. "We both can. Not as weapons or symbols or even as a prophesied savior and his mate, but just as Harry and Fleur." The simplicity of it, the sheer, ordinary wonder of having a future not defined by Voldemort, struck Harry with unexpected force. Tears pricked at his eyes, and he turned to Fleur, overwhelmed by gratitude for her constant presence throughout his journey. "I love you," he said, the words emerging naturally despite never having spoken them quite this way before. "I think I have since that first day, even before I knew what it meant." Fleur's smile was radiant, her own eyes bright with emotion. And I have loved you since my magic first recognized yours, she replied. Even at 8 years old, I knew you were mine to protect, to cherish. That has never changed. As dawn broke over Hogsmeade, casting golden light across the battlefield, Harry Potter kissed Fleur Delacour, not as children bound by a mysterious magical connection, not as soldiers in a prophesied war, but as a young man and woman who had chosen each other, again and again, through every challenge life had placed before them. Around them, the world began to rebuild itself. Order members reunited, injuries were treated, plans were made for the aftermath. But for Harry and Fleur, this moment existed in perfect isolation, a beginning, rather than an end. Where Harry went, Fleur followed. Where Fleur led, Harry trusted. It had been their truth since childhood, and now, with the shadow of Voldemort finally lifted, it would define their future as well. 10 years later the Veela enclave hummed with celebration, fairy lights dancing through ancient trees and music drifting on the summer air. Tables laden with food and drink dotted the central courtyard, where wizards, witches, and Veela mingled freely, a gathering that would have been unimaginable 20 years earlier. Sirius Black, his dark hair now liberally streaked with silver, raised a glass in toast. To Harry and Fleur Potter Delacour, on their 5th wedding anniversary. May your next 5 years be as remarkable as the first, though perhaps with fewer international magical crises to resolve. Laughter rippled through the gathering as glasses were raised in response. Harry, now 24 and looking more like his father than ever, wrapped an arm around his wife's waist. At 27, Fleur remained breathtakingly beautiful, her Veela heritage ensuring she would age with graceful slowness. Sirius exaggerates, Harry said dryly. It was only 2 international crises, and the Dragon Sanctuary incident hardly counts. Tell that to the Romanian ministry, Ron Weasley called out, earning more laughter. Now a senior Auror, Ron had developed a confident ease that complemented his strategic mind. Beside him, his wife Hermione, recently appointed as the youngest ever head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, rolled her eyes affectionately. I still maintain that incident could have been avoided with proper regulatory oversight, she insisted. Always the bureaucrat, Fleur teased. Even at our anniversary party. The banter continued as plates were filled and conversations flowed. Harry found himself watching the gathering with quiet amazement, still sometimes surprised by the life he'd built. After Voldemort's defeat, Harry had completed his education at Hogwarts while Fleur finished at Beauxbatons. They had then taken time to travel, exploring magical communities around the world and learning traditions beyond Britain's sometimes insular perspective. Eventually, they had settled into careers that allowed them to bridge different magical worlds, Harry as a special liaison between the British Ministry and various magical species, Fleur as an international cursebreaker whose work often intersected with Veela interests. Their marriage 5 years ago had been an international magical event, blending wizarding and Veela traditions in a ceremony that symbolized the growing cooperation between magical communities in the post-Voldemort era. Canute for your thoughts. Remus asked, joining Harry with a fresh drink in hand. Though grey had completely claimed his hair, the former werewolf looked healthier than ever, a benefit of revolutionary developments in the wolfsbane potion pioneered by Severus Snape before his retirement to a quiet cottage in northern Scotland. Just marveling at how far we've come, Harry admitted. Sometimes I still expect to wake up in that cupboard under the stairs. Instead, you wake up beside a beautiful Veela wife, in a home split between 3 countries, with more friends than you can count, Remus observed. James and Lily would be so proud, Harry. Not just of what you accomplished against Voldemort, but of the man you've become since. Harry smiled, touched by the sentiment. I had good teachers. You, Sirius, Dumbledore in his way. The Veela. Even Snape, though he'd hate to hear it. And speaking of teachers, Remus nodded toward the edge of the gathering, where Albus Dumbledore had just arrived, leaning more heavily on his staff than he once had but still conveying an aura of serene power. I believe our former headmaster has finally decided to grace us with his presence. Though officially retired as Hogwarts headmaster, McGonagall now held that position. Dumbledore remained active in international magical cooperation, his reputation only enhanced by his role in Voldemort's defeat. His relationship with Harry had evolved into something approaching friendship, the old manipulations and secrets replaced by mutual respect and occasional collaboration on magical research. As Harry moved to greet Dumbledore, a small voice called out, "Papa! Papa, look what Grandmere taught me." 3-year-old Lily Apollon Potter Delacour came rushing across the courtyard, her silver-streaked black hair flying behind her and her green eyes alight with excitement. In her small palm danced a perfect miniature ball of blue-white Veela fire. Harry knelt to his daughter's level, pride swelling in his chest. "That's amazing, little flower. Very controlled for your first fire." "Not her first," came Queen Celeste's amused voice as she followed at a more dignified pace. Though she now shared leadership of the Veela Nation with Apollon, preparing for eventual succession, the Queen remained a striking figure of ageless beauty and power. "She produced her first flame 2 weeks ago, but we've been practicing control before the grand unveiling." Harry laughed. "Keeping secrets from your papa, are you?" he teased his daughter, who giggled and extinguished the flame with a careful clap of her hands. "A surprise," Lily corrected seriously. "Uncle Sirius says good surprises are allowed." "Of course he does," Harry said dryly, scooping his daughter into his arms. "Let's find Mama and show her what a talented little Veela you are." As they moved through the gathering, accepting congratulations and well wishes, Harry caught Fleur's eye across the courtyard. 20 years after a young Veela had recognized her mate in a neglected little boy, their connection remained the defining constant of his life, a bond forged in extraordinary circumstances but sustained by ordinary, everyday love. Fleur met them halfway, her face lighting up at the excitement in their daughter's expression. "What has Papa looking so proud, ma petite?" As Lily eagerly demonstrated her new skill, Harry watched his wife and daughter with a contentment so complete it almost hurt. From the cupboard under the stairs to this moment, it was a journey he could scarcely have imagined, and one made possible by that singular moment of recognition between two children who should have been too young to understand what they'd found in each other. Later that evening, when the celebration had quieted and Lily was asleep in her grandmother's care, Harry and Fleur walked alone through the moonlit gardens where they had first begun to know each other as children. "Sometimes I wonder," Harry said softly, "what would have happened if you hadn't recognized me that day? If your family hadn't come to Britain, or if Dumbledore had met with them somewhere else." "I would have found you eventually," Fleur replied with absolute certainty. "The mate bond doesn't create the connection, Harry, it merely reveals what was always meant to be. Our magic was always destined to find each other. Like your grandmother said, old magic, deeper than we understand." "Exactly." Fleur stopped beside the pond where they had spent countless hours as children, her hand finding his in the darkness. "Besides, I think you underestimate yourself. Even without me, you would have found your way. You've never been defined solely by your connection to me, or to Voldemort, or to the prophecy. You've always been just Harry, brave, kind, stubborn Harry, who happened to have an unusual destiny." Harry smiled, still amazed by how thoroughly she understood him. "Well, I for one am grateful I didn't have to find out. Having you with me made all the difference, not just in defeating Voldemort, but in everything that came after. In becoming who I wanted to be, not just who circumstances made me." "Where you go, I go," Fleur reminded him, echoing the promise that had defined their relationship from the beginning. "Where you lead, I trust," Harry completed, drawing her into his arms. Above them, stars wheeled in ancient patterns, witnessing one quiet moment in a story that had begun with a child's recognition and a nation's declaration of war. A story that had changed the course of magical history not through prophecy or power, but through the simple, revolutionary act of putting love before control, connection before isolation, healing before harm. In the end, that had been the true magic, not the defeat of a Dark Lord or the destruction of Horcruxes, but the bonds formed along the way. Between a boy and a Veela. Between magical nations once separate. Between a godfather reclaimed and a childhood restored. Harry Potter had once been claimed by a young Veela, setting in motion events that would reshape his destiny. But the greater truth, revealed over 20 years of shared life, was that they had claimed each other, again and again, day by day, choice by choice. And in that mutual claiming, they had found not possession but liberation. Not fate, but freedom. Not the end of a prophecy, but the beginning of a life. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.